The moment Elena Voss said "I do," the church doors exploded inward. 6 men in black suits, guns drawn. Her groom collapsed, blood pooling beneath white lilies. Then he appeared. Luca Moretti, the man her father had stolen from, the ghost in every family whisper. He didn't ask. He simply took her, veil still trailing, into a world where debts were paid in blood and daughters inherited their father's sins. 3 months in his captivity would teach her something terrifying. Monsters could make you feel safer than saints ever did. Stay with me until the end. Like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The wedding dress had cost $12,000. Elena Voss noticed this detail with strange clarity as Luca Moretti's driver shoved her into the back of a black Mercedes, the handmade lace tearing against the doorframe. $12,000 her father had paid without flinching for a marriage that had lasted exactly 47 seconds. She could still hear the screaming from inside the church. "Drive!" Luca's voice came from beside her, low and eerily calm for a man who'd just orchestrated a massacre in the house of worship. He didn't look at her. His attention remained fixed on his phone, blood speckling the screen as his thumb moved across it with practiced efficiency. Elena's hands shook in her lap, white satin gloves now stained rust red from where she'd touched her ex-fiancé, she corrected herself with hysterical precision, as he'd fallen. Michael Chen, 29 years old, Harvard, MBA. His mother had given Elena a pearl necklace that morning, weeping with joy. Now Michael was dead, and Elena was sitting next to his killer in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. "You're going to want to breathe," Luca said, still not looking at her. "Hyperventilating in that corset won't end well." She hadn't realized she was gasping until he said it. The words cut through her panic like a slap, and she forced herself to inhale slowly, though her lungs felt wrapped in iron bands. "Who?" Her voice came out broken. She swallowed and tried again. "Who are you?" Now he looked at her. Elena had seen photographs. Her father kept them in a locked drawer in his study. She'd found them when she was 16, along with documents she hadn't understood and numbers that made her stomach turn. Even in grainy surveillance photos, Luca Moretti had been striking. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw and file it away for later use. In person, he was something else entirely. He studied her with the detached interest of someone examining a painting they might purchase. Not cruel exactly, just absent of warmth. His suit was impeccable despite the violence, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes. A wedding ring indented his left hand, she noticed. No, not a wedding ring, just a mark where one had been. The skin was paler there, like he'd only recently removed it. "You know who I am," he said finally. "Your father made sure of that, I'm certain." Luca Moretti. Speaking his name felt like inviting a curse into her mouth. "My father said you were dead." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or its darker cousin. "Your father says a lot of things, very few of them true." The car slid through New York traffic with the smooth efficiency of money and fear. Other drivers seemed to sense something and moved aside without quite knowing why. Elena watched the city blur past, her city, now foreign and strange through tears she hadn't noticed falling. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere we can talk." You killed Michael. You killed him at our wedding." "I killed a man who knew exactly what kind of family he was marrying into and didn't care." Luca's tone remained conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "I killed a man who was going to help your father disappear the money he stole from me. I killed a man who made a choice, just like your father did, just like you're going to." Elena's blood turned to ice water. "I don't know anything about any money." "Then this will be a very educational conversation." The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Elena didn't recognize. Luca's driver, a thick-necked man with scars crossing his knuckles, opened the door and stood waiting. When Elena didn't move, Luca sighed. "You can walk, or Marco can carry you. Either way, you're coming upstairs." She walked. The elevator ride took less than a minute, but felt eternal. Elena caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. A ghost bride, mascara tracking down her cheeks, her carefully pinned hair collapsing in dark waves around her shoulders. She looked like something from a Gothic novel. She looked terrified. She was terrified. The penthouse opened directly from the elevator. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. The decor was minimalist and expensive, the kind of space that screamed money without needing to say a word. Luca shrugged off his jacket and draped it over a chair. Beneath it, his white shirt was pristine except for 3 drops of blood near the collar. He caught her staring. "Not mine," he said simply. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. A tattoo ran up his left arm, something in Italian she couldn't quite read. "Sit." "I'd rather stand." "Sit, Elena. We're going to be here a while." The use of her name, familiar, intimate, made her skin crawl. But she sat, perching on the edge of a leather sofa that probably cost more than her college tuition. Luca poured himself 3 fingers of something amber from a crystal decanter and didn't offer her any. 12 years ago, he began, settling into a chair across from her, your father came to me with an opportunity. A real estate deal in Brooklyn, completely legitimate. I was looking to diversify, and Robert Voss had credentials that checked out. Harvard Business School. 15 years at Goldman Sachs. References that sang his praises. He paused to sip his drink, his eyes never leaving her face. I gave him $18 million to invest. That money represented 3 years of work, dozens of negotiations, carefully cultivated relationships. It was my way out, Elena. My chance to leave this life and build something clean. Elena's mouth had gone dry. Your father took that money, Luca continued as if she hadn't spoken, and disappeared. No deal, no Brooklyn real estate, no return on investment, just gone, like smoke. And you know what the brilliant part was? He'd structured everything through so many shells and offshore accounts that legally I had no recourse. I couldn't sue, couldn't report it. The money had never officially existed. My father wouldn't... Your father, Luca interrupted, his voice hardening for the first time, is a thief and a coward who let his business partners die rather than return what he stole. 3 men, Elena. 3 good men who vouched for him, who brought him to me. They paid with their lives for his betrayal. The room felt like it was tilting. Elena gripped the sofa's arm to steady herself. You killed them. I held them responsible for their recommendation. Yes. The casual admission made her stomach heave. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting nausea. Luca leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the glass dangling from his fingers. For 12 years, I've been looking for your father. He's good. I'll give him that. He covered his tracks well, changed names, moved countries, always stayed one step ahead. But then 6 months ago, he made a mistake. He came back to New York, Elena whispered. He came back to New York, Luca confirmed. For you. His precious daughter, graduating from Columbia with honors. He couldn't resist. Love makes people stupid. If you're going to kill me to hurt him, I'm not going to kill you, Elena. I'm going to give you a choice. Luca set down his glass and stood, crossing to the windows. Against the Manhattan skyline, he looked like something carved from shadow. Your father still has my money. All 18 million plus 12 years of interest. I want it back. I told you I don't know anything about... You don't. Yet. He turned to face her. But you're going to help me get it anyway. Elena stood, her dress rustling like dry leaves. I won't help you hurt my father. Then your father will watch you pay for his crimes instead. The words hung between them, sharp as broken glass. You said I had a choice, Elena said, her voice shaking. You do. Help me willingly or help me unwillingly. Either way, you help me. That's not a choice. It's the only choice anyone ever really has, how we face what's inevitable. Elena wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to wake up in her apartment and discover this was all some elaborate nightmare brought on by wedding stress. Instead, she stood in a destroyed $12,000 dress and asked the only question that mattered. What do you want me to do? Luca smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. For now? Nothing. You're going to stay here while I make some arrangements. There's a bedroom through that door. You'll find clothes that should fit. We'll talk more tomorrow. You're keeping me prisoner. I'm keeping you safe. There's a difference. Safe from what? From everyone who might use you the way I'm using you. Your father made enemies besides me, Elena. Some of them are significantly less patient. He walked to the elevator and pressed the call button. Marco materialized from somewhere, had he been there the whole time, and took position beside his boss. "Don't try to leave," Luca said as the doors opened. "The elevator requires a key. The windows don't open. The doors to the stairs are alarmed. Marco will be outside, and he doesn't share my prohibition against hurting you. Just rest. We'll talk in the morning." Then he was gone, and Elena was alone in a gilded cage 40 stories above the city. She stood frozen for a long moment, processing. Then she ran to the elevator and stabbed the call button, knowing it wouldn't work but needing to try anyway. Nothing happened. She tried the stairs, locked, as promised. The windows were triple-paned and likely bulletproof. Finally, she sank to the floor in a ruined wedding dress and let herself cry. Elena woke to unfamiliar ceiling and the smell of coffee. For one blissful moment she didn't remember. Then it all crashed back. The church, the blood, Michael's eyes going vacant as he fell. She pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. The bedroom she'd collapsed in sometime after midnight was decorated in shades of cream and gray, expensively neutral. The clothes Luca had mentioned filled a walk-in closet, designer labels, all in her size. Somehow, that made it worse. He'd planned this, known she'd end up here. She showered until the water ran cold, scrubbing away the last traces of the wedding that wasn't. The bathroom mirror showed her dark hair hanging in wet ropes, her face pale, her eyes bruised from crying. She looked like a stranger. The clothes fit perfectly. Black leggings, a soft sweater, everything high-end and comfortable. She felt like a doll being dressed for someone else's amusement. Luca was waiting in the kitchen when she emerged. He'd traded yesterday's suit for dark jeans and a Henley, his hair still damp from his own shower. He looked younger like this, maybe 35 instead of 40. He looked almost normal. "Coffee?" he offered. "I want to call my father." "No." "I want to call the police." Also no. He poured 2 cups anyway, sliding one across the marble island. "Sit. We have a lot to discuss." Elena remained standing. "You can't keep me here forever." "I can keep you here as long as necessary." He sipped his coffee, watching her over the rim. "But I'd prefer your cooperation. Easier for everyone." "I won't help you." "You already are. Your father knows I have you by now. He's panicking, making mistakes. The longer you stay here, the more desperate he gets." Luca set down his cup. "But I'm not a patient man, Elena. So here's how this is going to work." He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and turned the screen toward her. Her father's face filled the display, older than she remembered, grayer, the lines around his eyes deeper. He was in what looked like a hotel room, pacing. "Is this live?" she whispered. "Was. From an hour ago. I've been tracking him since yesterday." Luca pulled the phone back. "He's in Montreal, about to run again, unless you give me a reason to stop him." "What reason could I possibly call him? Tell him you're fine. Tell him I haven't hurt you. Tell him—" Luca paused, something calculating crossing his features. "Tell him you'll stay with me willingly if he gives back the money." Elena laughed, the sound bitter. "He'll never believe that." "Then make him believe it." "Why would I?" "Because if you don't, I'll find him anyway, and when I do, I'll make sure you watch what happens next." The threat landed like a punch. Elena gripped the counter, her knuckles white. "You're a monster." "Yes," Luca agreed simply. "But I'm a monster who keeps his word. Help me get my money back and you both walk away alive. Refuse, and I take everything. The money, his life, and whatever future you thought you'd have." He held out his phone. Elena stared at it for a long moment. Then, hating herself, she took it. Her father answered on the first ring. "Elena? Elena? Oh, Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine, Dad." Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. I'm okay." "Where are you? I'm coming to get you. Just tell me." "No." She closed her eyes. "No, Dad, you can't. He wants the money. The money you took from him." Silence stretched across the line. When her father spoke again, his voice had changed. "He told you about that. He told me everything." Elena listened to me very carefully. Whatever he said, it's more complicated than he made it sound. That money was dirty. It belonged to— I don't care where it came from. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. He wants it back, all of it. And he says if you don't give it to him, he'll kill us both. I can't just... It's not that simple. The money's been invested, moved, it's tied up in... Then untie it. Elena opened her eyes and found Luca watching her, his expression unreadable. You have 48 hours, Dad. After that, I don't know what happens, but I don't think either of us wants to find out.
Baby, you don't understand what you're asking. I understand that you stole from a very dangerous man, and now I'm paying for it. Tears tracked down her face, but her voice stayed steady. 48 hours. He'll be in touch about the transfer. She ended the call before he could respond and set the phone on the counter with shaking hands. Luca picked it up, checked something, then nodded. Well done. Go to hell. Probably, but not today.
He pocketed the phone and picked up his coffee again. Your father will scramble now, start moving money around, looking for ways out. That's expected. But he'll also start thinking about what $18 million means versus what you mean. And that's when things get interesting. Elena wanted to slap him, wanted to scream. Instead, she just asked, what happens in 48 hours when he doesn't pay? Then we adjust our approach. You mean you kill him? I mean, Luca said carefully, we find another way to motivate him. The implications settled over her like ice water. She was the leverage. She'd always been the leverage. I need some air, she said quietly. The balcony's through there. He gestured to glass doors she hadn't noticed. 30 feet long, completely private. Marco's on the far end, but he'll pretend he doesn't see you. It was something. Not freedom, but something. The balcony overlooked Central Park, the autumn trees burning gold and crimson below. Elena gripped the railing and let the October wind cut through her, sharp and clean. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives. Going to work, meeting friends for coffee, planning weddings that wouldn't end in blood. She'd been one of them, just yesterday. Beautiful, isn't it? She'd heard him approach but hadn't acknowledged it. Now she glanced sideways to find Luca leaning against the railing a few feet away, his own coffee steaming in the cool air. I used to hate this view, he continued. Felt like looking at something I could never have, all that normalcy. All those people who'd never have to make the choices I've made. Then why live here? Because I earned it. Every window, every floor, every brick. I earned it with blood and work and years of my life. Your father tried to take that away from me. Elena turned to face him fully. So this is about pride. This is about justice. Justice would be going through the proper channels. Lawyers, courts. Luca laughed, low and without humor. The proper channels? Elena, I am the proper channel for people like your father. Men who steal from criminals don't get to hide behind the law. My father's not a criminal. Your father took $18 million that didn't belong to him. What would you call that? She didn't have an answer. The wind pulled strands of hair across her face, and she pushed them back with numb fingers. He was trying to protect me, she said finally. Whatever he did, whoever he stole from, he did it to give me a better life. And that makes it noble? It makes it love. Something shifted in Luca's expression, there and gone so fast she almost missed it. He looked away, jaw tight. Love, he repeated, like the word tasted strange. Is that what you call it when someone ruins lives to benefit their own family? What would you call it? Selfishness dressed in sentiment. He pushed off the railing and headed back inside. Elena watched him go, something bothering her about the conversation. Not what he'd said, but what he hadn't. The way he'd flinched at the word love, like it was something that could hurt him. She filed it away, a crack in the armor, however small. The next 48 hours passed in strange suspension. Luca left each morning, business, he said, though he never specified what kind, and returned each evening. Marco stood guard, a silent presence that somehow managed to be both threatening and bored. Elena filled the time with books from the penthouse's extensive library, with long showers, with staring out windows and wondering if this was what her life would be now. Luca was gone more than he was present, but when he was there, he was complicated. He'd bring her food from restaurants she'd mentioned liking, though she'd never told him about them. He'd leave books on her nightstand, first editions, rare finds, things that must have cost a fortune. Once, she'd found a bottle of her favorite perfume in the bathroom, the one her mother used to wear before she died. "How did you know?" she'd asked that evening when he returned. "Know what?" "The perfume. My favorites restaurants. The books." He'd shrugged, already turning away. "I've been watching your father for 6 months. You were part of that surveillance." It should have felt creepy. It did feel creepy. But there was also something else, the uncomfortable realization that Luca Moretti had paid more attention to her preferences in 6 months than Michael had in 2 years of dating. She hated that she'd noticed. On the second evening, with hours left before the deadline, Luca made dinner. Elena found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, efficiently chopping vegetables. The sight was so incongruous. This man who'd killed her fiancé now dicing bell peppers with professional precision, that she just stood and stared. "You cook," she said finally. "Everyone should know how to cook. Makes you less dependent on others." "Where'd you learn?" "My mother." He didn't look up from the cutting board. "Before she passed, she made sure I could take care of myself. Said men who couldn't cook were useless." It was the first personal thing he'd shared. Elena found herself moving closer, drawn by curiosity she didn't want to examine too closely. "What are you making?" "Risotto, Milanese style? Hungry?" She shouldn't be. Shouldn't want to share a meal with her captor like they were friends, like he hadn't destroyed her life. But the smell was incredible, and she hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days. "I guess," she admitted. They ate at the island, the silence broken only by the clink of silverware. The risotto was perfect, creamy and rich, the saffron turning it sunset gold. Elena ate slowly, savoring each bite despite herself. "You're good at this," she said. "I'm good at most things I set my mind to." Modest, too. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Modesty is for people who need to hide their competence. I don't." "You're also arrogant." "That's not arrogance, it's accuracy." He took a sip of wine. He'd poured her a glass too, which she'd ignored. "Tell me about Colombia. What did you study? Why do you care?" "I'm curious. Humor me." She shouldn't engage, shouldn't make this human, but something about the way he asked, genuine interest without expectation, made her answer. "Art history with a minor in business." "Art history." He said it like he was tasting the words. "Why?" "Because numbers made sense to my father. Spreadsheets, projections, quarterly reports. I wanted something that couldn't be reduced to a balance sheet." "And the business minor?" "Insurance, in case the art thing didn't work out." Luca nodded slowly. "Smart, beauty with practicality. Most people can't hold both." "Is that a compliment?" "An observation." They fell quiet again. Elena pushed risotto around her plate, not quite full, but unable to eat more. "What happens at midnight?" she asked. "When the deadline passes?" Luca's expression didn't change. "Your father calls, or he doesn't. Either way, we move forward." "Forward how?" "That depends on him." "You're going to kill him." "I'm going to do what's necessary." Elena set down her fork. "And me? What happens to me?" For the first time, Luca looked uncertain. It was barely there. A flicker in his eyes, a tension in his shoulders. But she saw it. "I haven't decided yet," he said finally. It was the most honest answer he'd given her. At 11:47 p.m., Luca's phone rang. They were both in the living room, Elena reading, Luca working on his laptop, the silence between them almost comfortable. The ringtone shattered it like glass. Luca checked the screen. His expression went flat. "It's your father." Elena's heart kicked into overdrive. "Put it on speaker." He did. "Robert," Luca said, his voice calm, professional. "You're cutting it close. I need more time." Her father's voice sounded ragged, desperate. "The money's not liquid. I need at least another week to—" The deadline was 48 hours. I know, but you have to understand, some of it's tied up in investments that can't be liquidated without— I don't care about your investment strategy, Robert. I care about my $18 million. I can get you $10 million by tomorrow. The rest will take all of it tomorrow, or the price goes up." Silence crackled across the line. Then, "What price?" Luca's eyes found Elena's across the room. something much more valuable than money. Don't you dare! Midnight tomorrow, Robert. All 18 million plus 4 million in interest. 22 million total, or I start taking installments from your daughter. You fucking bastard. If you touch her... Midnight, Luca repeated, and ended the call. Elena's hands were shaking. You're bluffing. Am I? You said you wouldn't hurt me. I said I wouldn't kill you. There are a lot of things between not hurt and not kill. He said it so matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. Elena wanted to throw something at him, wanted to scream. Instead, she just asked, "Why are you doing this?" Because your father needs to understand what he took from me. Money. He took money. He took my future. Luca closed his laptop with careful precision. That 18 million was everything I'd saved to go legitimate, to build something that didn't require blood to maintain. Your father didn't just steal money, Elena. He stole my way out. The raw emotion in his voice caught her off guard. She'd seen him cold, calculating, even amused. But this was real. So you became what he forced you to become, she said softly. I became what I was always going to become. He just removed my chance to be anything else. They stared at each other across the expensive room, two people trapped by circumstances neither had chosen. I'm sorry, Elena said, for what he did to you. I'm sorry. Luca's expression shuddered. Don't apologize for him. It's insulting to us both. Then what do you want from me? I want you to understand that this isn't personal. You're collateral damage. Wrong place. Wrong father. Wrong life. That doesn't make it better. No, he agreed. But it's the truth. He stood and headed toward his bedroom. At the doorway, he paused. Get some sleep, Elena. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Then he was gone, and she was alone with her thoughts and the clock ticking toward midnight. Her father didn't call. Midnight came and went, then 1 a.m., then 2. Elena paced the penthouse, exhaustion and anxiety warring in her blood. Luca had disappeared into his room and hadn't emerged. At 3:15, she couldn't take it anymore. She knocked on his door. No answer. Knocked again, harder. What? His voice came through muffled and annoyed. Can we talk? It's 3 a.m. I can't sleep. Silence. Then footsteps, and the door opened. Luca stood in the doorway wearing only sweatpants, his hair disheveled, his chest bare. Elena tried not to notice the scars crossing his torso, bullet wounds, knife marks, the evidence of a violent life written on his skin. Talk, he said. He's not going to pay. The words tumbled out. My father's not going to pay. He's going to run, and you're going to kill him, and I'm going to be stuck here forever. Probably accurate except the last part. What happens to me when you kill him? Luca leaned against the doorframe, studying her. Why do you assume I'll kill him? Because that's what you do. What you are. You don't know what I am. Then tell me. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I'm someone who makes hard choices so other people don't have to. I'm someone who provides services that society needs but pretends to condemn. I'm someone your father stole from and who has every right to take what's owed. That's not an answer. That's a justification. What do you want from me, Elena? Absolution? Understanding? I can't give you either. I want to know if you're going to hurt me. Her voice broke on the last word. I want to know if I'm going to die in this apartment for something I didn't do. Luca's expression softened, barely, but enough to notice. He reached out like he might touch her face, then stopped himself. No, he said quietly. You're not going to die. Not here, not because of this. That's a promise. Why should I believe you? Because I've never lied to you, not once. I've been cruel and I've been harsh, but I've never lied. It was true. She realized with a start that it was absolutely true. I'm scared, she admitted. You should be. Fear keeps you smart. I don't want to be smart. I want to be normal again. Something in his face cracked, just for a second, but she saw it. Grief, maybe, or recognition. Normal is a luxury people like us don't get, he said. Your father made sure of that when he took my money. I'm making sure of it by taking you.
We're all just reactions to other people's choices now. That's bleak. That's life. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the apartment's perfect climate control. Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Why didn't you just kill my father? Why take me instead? It would have been cleaner. Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Because I wanted him to feel what I felt. Helpless. Watching something precious slip away, knowing you caused it, but being unable to fix it. He paused. And because killing you would have been wasteful. Wasteful. You're innocent in this. Punishing you permanently for his crimes would be inefficient. It was possibly the strangest compliment she'd ever received. Get some sleep, Luca said, already closing the door. Things will look different in the morning. Will they? No, but people always say that. The door clicked shut, leaving Elena alone in the hallway. She went back to her room and lay awake until dawn colored the windows, thinking about monsters and motives and the strange math of mercy. Bad. Morning brought news. Elena found Luca in the kitchen again, phone pressed to his ear, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. He ended the call as she approached. Your father's in the wind, he said without preamble. Left Montreal 6 hours ago. Current location unknown. Her stomach dropped. So he ran. He ran. Luca set down his phone with controlled precision. Which means we adjust. Adjust how? You're going to help me find him. I don't know where he is, but you know how he thinks, where he'd go, who he'd contact. Luca poured coffee, his movements sharp with barely contained anger. 12 years I've been chasing this man. 12 years. And he's about to learn that taking my money was the second worst decision he ever made. What was the worst? Making me care whether his daughter lives or dies. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning Elena didn't want to examine. I won't help you kill him, she said. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help me find him. What happens after that, we'll negotiate. Negotiate? Luca turned to face her fully. I'm not unreasonable, Elena. Your father stole from me. He owes me. But how I collect that debt? That has some flexibility. Meaning if you help me recover my money, I might be persuaded to let him live. He paused. Depending on how helpful you are. It was manipulation. Elena knew it was manipulation, but it was also a lifeline in a situation with no other exits. What do you need to know? She asked. They spent the next 3 hours at Luca's dining table, going through everything Elena knew about her father. His habits, his friends, the places he'd taken her as a child, the numbers he'd called most frequently, the accounts he'd mentioned in passing. Luca took notes with the focus of a man assembling a weapon, piece by piece. The cabin, he said suddenly, looking up from his laptop. You mentioned a cabin in Vermont. When I was 8, he sold it years ago. You're sure? Elena tried to remember. I think so. He said something about property taxes being too high. But you don't know for certain. No. Luca was already typing. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up property records, tax documents, satellite imagery. He'd been doing this for hours, cross-referencing everything she said against databases she didn't know existed. There, he said, turning the laptop toward her. Purchased in 1998 under an LLC registered in Delaware. Title transferred in 2014 to... He stopped, his expression going cold. To another LLC. Different name, same registration agent. What does that mean? It means your father never sold the cabin. He just made it look like he did. Luca snapped the laptop shut. Pack a bag. We're leaving in an hour. We? You think I'm leaving you here? You're my insurance policy, Elena. Where I go, you go. I'm not going to help you. Yes, you are. Because if your father's at that cabin and we show up without you, he'll run again. But if you're there, Luca stood, already moving toward his bedroom. If you're there, he might actually listen. Elena watched him disappear, her mind racing. This was it, her chance to see her father, to warn him, to maybe even escape. But it was also a trap. For him. For both of them. She thought about the risotto, the books, the way Luca had promised she wouldn't die.
She thought about Michael, bleeding out on white marble while Ave Maria played. She thought about choices and consequences and the strange way victims could become accomplices. Then she went to pack a bag. They drove north in a different Mercedes, black, armored, the windows tinted so dark the world outside looked like a negative image. Marco drove, Luca sat in back beside Elena, and two other men in suits followed in a second vehicle. "How many people do you need to confront one accountant?" Elena asked. "Accountants can be surprisingly dangerous when cornered." Luca didn't look up from his phone. "Your father's proven that already." "He's not dangerous, he's desperate." "Same thing, different vocabulary." They drove in silence for a while. The city gave way to suburbs, then to smaller towns, then to the kind of rural landscape Elena hadn't seen in years. Trees pressed close to the road, their autumn colors almost violent in the afternoon light. "I used to love coming here," she said quietly. "The cabin. We'd spend every summer there when I was little. My mom would paint on the porch while Dad and I went fishing." "Your mother passed when you were 12. It wasn't a question. Of course he knew. He knew everything." "Cancer," Elena confirmed. "Ovarian. By the time they caught it, there was nothing they could do." "That's when your father changed careers, left Goldman Sachs, went independent. He said he wanted more time with family, with me." "And you believed him?" Elena turned to glare at him. "He'd just lost his wife. I'd just lost my mother. Why wouldn't I believe him?" Luca finally looked up from his phone. "Because people don't leave seven-figure salaries out of grief, Elena. They leave them because they've been caught doing something they shouldn't, and they jump before they're pushed. You don't know that. I know that 2 months after your father left Goldman, the SEC started investigating irregularities in several accounts he'd managed. I know those investigations quietly closed when he agreed to certain conditions. I know that going independent gave him access to less scrutiny and more opportunities for creative accounting." Each word landed like a punch. Elena stared at him, wanting to argue, but the pieces were fitting together in ways she'd never let herself see before. "He was stealing," she whispered, "even before you." "Probably. Just from people with legal recourse who could ruin him if they pursued it." Luca pocketed his phone. "I was different. I was someone he thought he could rob without consequences. Because you're a criminal." "Because I'm a criminal," he agreed. He miscalculated. The rest of the drive passed in heavy silence. They reached the cabin at sunset. It sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by forest, exactly as Elena remembered. Same blue shutters, same wraparound porch, same feeling of being somewhere time had forgotten. Smoke rose from the chimney. "He's here," Luca said softly. He gestured to Marco, who spoke into his radio. The second car parked across the driveway, blocking the exit. "What's the plan?" Elena asked. "You knock. I wait. When he opens the door, we all have a conversation." "And if he runs?" "He won't get far." Luca's hand rested on her shoulder, firm, not quite gentle, a reminder of who held the power here. Together, they walked to the porch. Elena's hand shook as she knocked. Footsteps inside. A pause. Then her father's voice, cautious. "Who is it?" "It's me, Dad." The door flew open. Robert Voss looked older than she remembered, grayer, thinner, the lines on his face carved deep by stress. His eyes went wide when he saw her, then wider when he saw Luca behind her. "Elena, run!" "She's not running," Luca interrupted, "and neither are you. We're all going inside, and we're going to have a conversation like civilized people." "I've got a gun," her father said. "So do I. Mine's bigger." Luca's voice was almost bored. "This can go easy or hard, Robert. Your choice." For a moment, Elena thought her father might actually fight. His hand twitched toward his waistband. But then he saw Marco and the other men, saw the cars blocking his escape, and the fight went out of him. He stepped back. They went inside. The cabin looked the same inside too, same stone fireplace, same worn furniture. But everything felt smaller now, shabby in ways Elena's childhood memories hadn't preserved. "Sit," Luca ordered. Her father sat. Elena stood awkwardly by the door while Luca prowled the room, checking corners, looking behind furniture, making sure they were alone. "Cozy," he said finally. "I can see why you kept it." "What do you want?" Robert's voice was heavy with defeat. "You know what I want." I don't have it. Not all of it. Then you have some of it. That's a start. Elena watched this exchange, feeling like a spectator at her own life. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. Luca moved like a shark circling prey. How much? Luca asked. 14 million. I can have it transferred tomorrow. Tomorrow I needed 22 million. Today I need 25. That's not fair. Fair! Luca's voice cracked like a whip. You stole from me, Robert. You let 3 men die because you were too much of a coward to return what you'd taken. You hid behind your daughter and hoped I'd have mercy. And you want to talk about fair? Those men, I didn't know you'd kill them. You thought you could steal from criminals without consequences. You were wrong. Elena couldn't take it anymore. Dad, just give him the money. Please, let this end. Her father finally looked at her. Elena, sweetheart, I can't. The money's invested. To liquidate it all would mean, I don't care what it means. Her voice broke. He killed Michael. He took me. He's been holding me for days and all you can talk about is investments? I'm trying to protect you. By running? By leaving me with him? Tears streaked her face. I'm your daughter. I'm supposed to matter more than money. Robert Voss's face crumpled. You do. You're all that matters. Then prove it. Silence filled the cabin. Outside, the sun finished setting, leaving them in firelight and shadow. Luca spoke quietly. 14 million by tomorrow, the rest within the week. You do that and we all walk away. And Elena? Stays with me until I have all of it. Insurance. No. Her father stood. I want her released now. Keep me instead. You're not valuable enough, Luca said simply. I'd kill you out of annoyance within a day. Elena's more useful. There was something in how he said her name, something that made her father's eyes narrow. What have you done to her? Nothing she didn't survive. I swear if you've touched her, I've kept her fed, clothed, and safe, which is more than you did by stealing from me in the first place. Luca moved to the door. 14 million, Robert. Tomorrow. Wire instructions will be sent within the hour. Don't disappoint me again. He gestured to Elena. She looked at her father one last time, this man who'd raised her, who'd apparently been lying to her for years, and followed her captor into the night. Behind them, her father's voice. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. She didn't turn around. The drive back was quiet. Elena sat with her forehead pressed against the window, watching the dark forest blur past. Luca made phone calls in Italian, his voice low and clipped. When they were an hour from the city, he finally spoke to her. You did well. I betrayed my father. You saved his life. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. He was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I believe him. About the money being tied up. It would explain why he's been hiding instead of just paying me back. Does that change anything? No, he still stole from me. He still has to pay. What happens when he does? When you have all your money back? Luca looked at her in the dark car. What do you want to happen? It was a strange question, like her opinion mattered, like she had any say in this at all. I want to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare, she said. I want Michael alive. I want my father to be who I thought he was. I want my life back. Can't help with most of that. But when this is done, you'll get your freedom back. Will I? Elena turned to face him. You've seen where I live. You know my routines, my friends, my favorite places. You've basically memorized my entire life. How am I supposed to feel safe knowing you're out there, knowing all of that? You think I'd come after you? I think I have no idea what you'd do. That's the problem. Luca was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, I'd leave you alone. When this is over, I'd leave you alone completely. That's a promise. Your promises don't mean much to me. Then I'll just have to prove otherwise. They didn't speak again until they reached the city. 3 days later, the first transfer came through. $14 million, just as promised. Luca confirmed it on his laptop while Elena watched from the couch, her heart in her throat. First installment received, he said. So I can go? No, agreement was full payment. This is just down payment. You're moving the goalposts. I'm following our original terms. All of it, or you stay. Elena wanted to scream. Instead, she just nodded and went to her room, closing the door on his calculating expression. But something changed after that first payment. Luca started spending more time at the apartment, started eating meals with her instead of in his office, started asking her opinion on things, news articles, business decisions, what movie to watch. It felt like manipulation. It probably was manipulation, but it also felt like something else, something neither of them was willing to name. One evening, a week after the cabin, Elena found him on the balcony. He was smoking. She'd never seen him smoke before, staring out at the city. "Bad day?" she asked. "Complicated day." He offered her the cigarette. She surprised herself by taking it. "I didn't know you smoked." "I don't, usually." He watched her take a drag, something unreadable in his expression. "My mother would have killed me if she saw this." "Mine too." They stood in companionable silence, passing the cigarette back and forth. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "And will you answer honestly?" "Depends on the question." "Why did you really take me?" The truth, not the strategic answer. Luca was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, "Because I wanted your father to lose something that mattered, and because—" He stopped himself. "Because?" "Because when I saw you at that wedding, I thought—" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter. Tell me anyway." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Elena felt something shift between them. Something dangerous. "I thought you looked like someone who deserved better than what you were getting. Better than Michael Chen with his family money and empty promises. Better than a father who'd steal and hide and sacrifice you to save himself." He took the cigarette back, his fingers brushing hers. "I thought maybe you deserved the truth, even if it destroyed everything." "The truth about what?" "About who your father really is. What kind of life you've been living. What you could have instead." "With you?" She said it like a joke, but it came out wrong. Too serious, too real. "No, never with me." Luca crushed out the cigarette. "I'm the monster who kidnapped you, Elena. Don't romanticize that." But the way he looked at her when he said it made her wonder if he was trying to convince her or himself. That night, Elena lay awake thinking about monsters and motives, about the strange space between captor and captive where something else could grow. It terrified her. More than the kidnapping, more than the violence, more than any of it, because she was starting to understand Luca Moretti. And understanding him meant seeing past the monster to whatever lay beneath, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The second payment came 2 weeks later, $4 million. 6 more days, Luca said, closing his laptop. "Then you're free." Elena should have felt relief. Instead, she felt complicated. "What will you do?" she asked. "After?" "Disappear for a while. Let things cool down. Your father made waves when he ran, waves that are still settling." "And me?" "You go back to your life, find a new job. I'm assuming the museum position fell through when you disappeared from your own wedding. Find new friends if the old ones ask too many questions. Start over." It sounded simple. It sounded impossible. "What if I don't want to start over?" Luca looked at her sharply. "What are you saying?" "I don't know. Elena stood, pacing. "For 3 weeks, I've been terrified of you, hated you, wanted to escape. But also, you're the only person who's told me the truth about anything. My father lied. Michael lied. Everyone in my life built this perfect fantasy around me, and you're the one who tore it down. That's not a reason to—" "I'm not finished." She stopped pacing, facing him. "I've spent 3 weeks watching you, learning how you think, seeing how you operate. And yes, you're dangerous. Yes, you've done terrible things, but you're also consistent, honest in your way. You keep your promises. Elena, when this is over, when I'm free, what happens if I don't want to leave?" The question hung between them like a live wire. Luca stood slowly. "You're traumatized. This is Stockholm Syndrome. Basic psychology." "Is it? Or is it clarity?" "It's a fantasy. I'm your captor. You're my hostage. That's the reality." "Then explain why you bring me books. Why you cook for me. Why you promised I wouldn't die." "Because I'm not a complete monster." "You're not a monster at all." The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. You're just someone who got pushed into a corner and fought back the only way you knew how. Luca crossed to her in 3 steps. He grabbed her shoulders, not rough but firm, making her look at him. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice low and intense. In 6 days, you walk out that door. You go back to your life. You forget I exist. You don't come back. You don't reach out. You leave, and you never look back. Do you understand? Why? Because that's the only way this ends well for either of us. What if I don't want it to end well? What if I just want it to be real? She kissed him before she could think better of it. For one heartbeat, he froze. Then he was kissing her back, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer. It was desperate and angry, and 3 weeks of tension exploding all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca pressed his forehead against hers. This is a mistake, he whispered. I know. You'll regret it. Probably. I should stop this. Send you to your room. Draw a line. But you won't. No. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. No, I won't. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Elena felt something fundamental shift in the architecture of her captivity. She wasn't his prisoner anymore. She was something much more complicated than that. Sag. They didn't talk about it the next morning. Luca was gone before she woke, a note on the counter saying only business. Back tonight. Elena spent the day in a haze, replaying the kiss, trying to figure out what she'd done and why it felt simultaneously like the worst and best decision of her life. When Luca returned that evening, they ate dinner in careful silence. Then he said, "We need to talk." "I know. Last night was a mistake. You said no." He set down his fork. "I said it would be a mistake. I didn't say it was." Elena's heart skipped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that in 6 days your father's debt will be paid. You'll be free. And when that happens..." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "When that happens, I want you to take a week. Live your life, see your friends, go back to everything normal. Then, if you still want this, whatever this is, you'll know it's real and not just trauma talking. And if I come back, then we figure it out together. And if I don't?" Something flickered across his face, hurt, maybe, quickly hidden. "Then I'll know I did the right thing by letting you go." It was the most honest, vulnerable thing he'd ever said to her. Elena reached across the table and took his hand. "I'll come back." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." They sat like that, hands linked, the future uncertain but somehow less terrifying than it had been before. 4 days later, the final payment arrived. Luca confirmed the transfer, then closed his laptop with careful precision. "It's done," he said. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. "So I'm free?" "You're free." They stood in the middle of the penthouse, the same space where she'd arrived in a ruined wedding dress 3 weeks ago. Everything looked the same. Everything felt completely different. "I'll have Marco drive you home," Luca said, "unless there's somewhere else you'd rather go." "Home's fine. I'll have your things packed." "Luca." She stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Thank you. For kidnapping you? For keeping your word. For letting me go." He covered her hand with his. 1 week, Elena. That's all I'm asking. 1 week to be sure." "I'm already sure." "Then humor me anyway." She kissed him, brief, bittersweet. 1 week. Marco drove her home in silence. The city looked different through car windows, like she was seeing it for the first time. Her apartment building appeared unchanged, ordinary, almost disappointingly normal. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it. Wedding gifts were still piled in the corner, never opened. Her laptop sat on the coffee table, dead battery. 3 weeks of mail overflowed from her mailbox. Elena sat on her couch in the apartment she'd lived in for 4 years and felt like a stranger. Her phone, which she'd gotten back from Luca that morning, started ringing almost immediately. Friends, concerned messages, questions about the wedding, about where she'd been, about whether she was okay. She answered none of them. Instead, she sat in the silence and thought about monsters and mercy, about the strange math of Stockholm Syndrome versus genuine connection, about the difference between captivity and choice. 1 week, Luca had said. It felt like a lifetime. Damn. 6 days later, Elena stood outside Luca's building with a single suitcase. She'd tried. Really tried. Gone to coffee with friends, updated her resume, attempted to reconstruct her normal life. But everything felt hollow. Conversations seemed trivial. Her old concerns, whether the museum would hire her back, what to do about the wedding gifts, how to explain Michael's death. All of it felt like someone else's problems. She'd called her father once. He'd asked if she was okay, and she'd said yes. He'd asked if she could forgive him, and she'd hung up. Some questions didn't have answers yet, but one question did: where she wanted to be. And the answer was standing in front of her, looking surprised and vulnerable and exactly like the man who'd kidnapped her and somehow, impossibly, made her feel free. "You came back," Luca said. "I told you I would." "It's only been 6 days." 7 days? 6 days? The number doesn't matter. Elena set down her suitcase. "I came back because this is where I want to be. With you. Even knowing everything. Because of knowing everything." "Elena, Shai, I love you." The words came out certain, inevitable. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you made risotto. Maybe when you promised I wouldn't die. Maybe the moment you let me go. But I love you. And I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you." Luca looked like she'd struck him. "You can't. You don't know what that means." "I know exactly what it means. It means loving someone who's done terrible things. It means building a life in the margins of society. It means accepting that our story started with violence and might end with it too." She moved closer. "It means all of that, and I'm still here. I can't give you normal. I don't want normal. Normal got me Michael Chen and a father who stole millions. Normal got me a life built on comfortable lies." She took his hand. "I want real. Even if it's complicated, even if it's dangerous, I want real." For a long moment, Luca just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. "This is insane," he murmured against her hair. "Probably. We'll crash and burn. Maybe. I'll ruin you. Or I'll save you." He laughed, the sound raw and broken and real. "You already have." They stood on the sidewalk while the city moved around them, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and decided it didn't matter. When they finally pulled apart, Luca kept her hand in his. "Come upstairs," he said. "We need to talk about logistics, rules, how this works." "Or," Elena countered, "we could just figure it out as we go." "That's a terrible plan." "All my best decisions lately have been terrible plans." He smiled, genuinely smiled, not the calculated expression she'd seen before, but something warm and unguarded. "Welcome home, Elena." And just like that, the girl who'd been taken became the woman who chose to stay. The story wasn't over, they both knew that. Her father still existed. Luca's world was still dangerous. The foundation they were building was constructed on quicksand and maybe love and the strange alchemy of captor and captive becoming something else. But as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, their penthouse now, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Hope. Not for a fairy tale ending, not for easy happiness, but for something real, something fought for, something chosen with eyes wide open. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The first month passed like a fever dream. Elena moved into the penthouse fully, her belongings filling the empty spaces Luca had maintained with careful distance. Her books lined his shelves, her clothes hung beside his in the closet. Her coffee mug, chipped porcelain with a faded museum logo, sat next to his minimalist black cup every morning. They were building a life, or trying to. "You don't have to stay in all the time," Luca said one morning, watching her stare out the window at the city below. "You're not a prisoner anymore." "I know." "Then go out, see friends, live your life." Elena turned to face him. "What if this is my life now?" Something crossed his face, pleasure and concern tangled together. "You'll get bored eventually." "Will I?" He had no answer for that. The truth was more complicated than either of them wanted to admit. Elena had tried going back to her old routines. Coffee with her friend Sarah had lasted 20 minutes before the questions became too pointed, the concern too suffocating. How was she coping after Michael's death? Had she seen a therapist? Was she safe? She'd lied smoothly, Yes, she was fine. Yes, she was getting help. Yes, she was safe. The words had tasted like ash, because the real answer was impossible to explain. How could she tell anyone that she was living with the man who'd orchestrated Michael's murder? That she'd fallen in love with her kidnapper? That everything they thought they knew about her life was built on foundations that had crumbled the moment Luca Moretti walked into that church? So she'd stopped trying. She kept to the penthouse, to Luca's world, to the strange new normal they were constructing together. And if that made her dependent, isolated, too enmeshed, well, she'd chosen it with open eyes. Or so she told herself. I have to go to Chicago for a few days, Luca announced one evening over dinner. Business that needs handling in person. Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What kind of business? The kind you don't need details about. Don't do that. Don't shut me out like I'm still just what? His eyes met hers, challenging. Just someone I kidnapped 3 months ago? Just someone who doesn't understand what I do or why? Just someone you don't trust. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Luca set down his wine glass with deliberate care. It's not about trust, Elena. It's about protection. The less you know about certain aspects of my work, the safer you are. I don't want to be safe. I want to be with you. You can't have both. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Then come with me to the Parker benefit next week. My old boss invited me. It's just a fundraiser, perfectly safe, completely normal. Show me you can exist in my world too. Luca's expression went carefully blank. That's different. How? Because your world is full of people who ask questions, who take photos, who'll wonder who I am and start digging into backgrounds that don't bear scrutiny. So we make up a story. You're a real estate developer, an investor, something boring and believable. Elena, unless you're ashamed of me. She said it quietly, but the words landed like bombs. Unless this us only works when it's hidden away in your penthouse where no one can see. Luca stood too, moving around the table to where she stood rigid with hurt and anger. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I would burn down every building in this city before I'd be ashamed of you, he said, his voice low and fierce. But the moment I walk into that benefit on your arm, I make you a target. Every enemy I have will see you as leverage. Every rival will see you as a weakness to exploit. Is that what you want? I want to be more than your secret. You're not my secret. You're my... He stopped himself, jaw tight. You're what? Everything, he admitted, the word seeming to cost him. You're everything, Elena. Which is exactly why I can't parade you around in public and paint a target on your back. She softened slightly, her anger bleeding into something more complicated. I'm already a target. I was a target the moment you took me. Hiding won't change that. No, but being smart about it might keep you alive. They stood close enough to touch, the dinner cooling between them. The fundamental tension of their relationship laid bare. She wanted visibility. He wanted protection. Neither was entirely wrong. Chicago, Elena said finally. How long? 3 days. 4 at most. Take me with you. No. Lucas Bupu. No, Elena. This isn't negotiable. His hands dropped from her face. Marco will stay here with you. You'll be safe. I don't want to be safe. I want to be with you. Sometimes you don't get both. He left the next morning before she woke. Nothing but a note on the pillow. Be good. Back Friday. Elena crumpled it in her fist and threw it across the room. The first day without him crawled by. The second was worse. By the third, Elena felt like she was suffocating in the beautiful cage she'd chosen. Marco stood guard like a silent statue, acknowledging her presence with barely perceptible nods. She tried to draw him into conversation once. How long have you worked for Luca? And received a grunt in response. After that, she stopped trying. On the 4th day, when Luca still hadn't returned, Elena made a decision. She dressed carefully, nothing too flashy, but nothing that screamed prisoner either. Jeans, a cashmere sweater, boots. She pulled her hair into a ponytail and grabbed her purse. Marco materialized the moment she approached the elevator. I'm going out, she said, pressing the call button. No. I'm not asking permission. Mr. Moretti said, Mr. Moretti isn't here. And unless you're planning to physically restrain me, I'm leaving. They stared at each other. Marco's hand moved toward his phone, but Elena was faster. She stepped into the elevator the moment the doors opened and stabbed the button for the lobby. Marco's hand shot out, catching the door. You go out, I go with you. Fine. She hadn't really expected to escape him anyway. The city felt foreign and familiar at once. Elena walked without direction, Marco following 3 steps behind like an ominous shadow. People gave them a wide berth. Something about Marco's presence screamed danger to anyone paying attention. She ended up at the coffee shop near her old apartment, the one where she used to study for exams and meet friends and plan a future that no longer existed. The barista didn't recognize her. Why would she? It had only been a few months, but Elena felt like a completely different person. She ordered her usual, vanilla latte, extra shot, and found a table by the window. Marco stood by the door, arms crossed, scanning the room like he expected assassins to rappel through the ceiling. You can sit down, Elena called to him. I'm not going anywhere. He didn't move. She sipped her coffee and watched people pass outside. A couple holding hands, a mother with a stroller, a businessman talking urgently into his phone, all of them living normal lives, unaware of the violence and complexity that lurked just beneath the city's polished surface. She'd been one of them once. Elena? The voice made her freeze. She turned slowly, hoping she'd imagined it. Sarah Chen stood 3 feet away, coffee in hand, her expression cycling through shock and relief and confusion. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. Elena, where have you been? I've been trying to call you for weeks. I thought, after Michael, we all thought... Her eyes welled up. Are you okay? Elena's mind raced. Sarah was Michael's cousin. Michael, who'd died at their wedding. Michael, whose blood had stained Elena's dress while Luca dragged her away. I'm fine, Elena managed. I just needed some time. Time. Elena, you disappeared. After what happened, you just vanished. The police were asking questions. Your father wouldn't tell us anything. Sarah noticed Marco for the first time, her gaze sharpening. Who's that? A friend. He doesn't look like a friend. He looks like a bodyguard. Sarah, I really can't what? Can't explain where you've been? Can't tell me why you're being followed by some guy who looks like he kills people for a living? Sarah's voice was rising, drawing attention. Michael is dead, Elena. Someone shot him at your wedding, and you just, disappeared with some mystery man? What am I supposed to think? Across the coffee shop, Marco had straightened, his hand moving inside his jacket. Elena stood quickly, putting herself between Sarah and the bodyguard. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. I'm so sorry about Michael, about all of it, but I can't explain right now. It's complicated. Complicated? Sarah's laugh was bitter. My cousin died at your wedding. You owe me more than it's complicated. I know, and I'm sorry, but I need you to trust me when I say I can't talk about this. Not here, not now. When then? I don't know. Sarah stared at her like she was looking at a stranger. Maybe she was. You've changed. I don't even recognize you anymore. The words struck deeper than they should have, because Sarah was right. The Elena who'd gotten engaged to Michael Chen, who'd planned a tasteful wedding and imagined a conventional future, that Elena was gone. In her place stood someone harder, more complicated, someone who'd chosen a monster over safety and couldn't quite regret it. I'm sorry, Elena said again, because there was nothing else to say. Sarah shook her head and walked away, leaving her coffee abandoned on the counter. Elena sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. Marco appeared at her elbow. We should go. Give me a minute? Now would be better. She looked up at him, really looked, and saw something she'd missed before. Concern. Beneath the professional menace, Marco was actually worried. Did I just make things worse? She asked. Probably. Will she go to the police? If she's smart, no. If she's angry, Marco shrugged. We'll deal with it. We or Luca? Same thing. They left the coffee shop and headed back to the penthouse in tense silence. Elena's phone rang twice during the elevator ride. Sarah's number both times. She ignored it. Inside the apartment, Marco finally spoke again. Mr. Moretti needs to know about this. I'll tell him. I'm telling him now. Marco, but he was already on his phone, speaking rapid Italian. Elena caught Luca's name, her own name, something that sounded like problema. When he hung up, Marco's expression was grim. He's coming back early, tonight. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Luca arrived at 11 p.m., slamming through the penthouse door like a storm given human form. Elena was curled on the couch, pretending to read, but she stood the moment she heard him. What were you thinking? He demanded, not even bothering with hello. Going out without telling me where, running into someone from your old life? I didn't know she'd be there. That's exactly the point. His voice cracked through the space. You don't know who'll be where. You don't know who's watching. You don't think about consequences. You just what? Just try to have a life outside these four walls? Elena's own anger rose to meet his. You left me here for 4 days with no word, no contact, nothing but Marco's charming company. What did you expect me to do? I expected you to be smart, to understand that there are people who'd love to use you against me. I'm not some fragile thing you can lock away for safekeeping. No, you're the woman I... He stopped himself, jaw clenched. You're someone who matters, which means you're someone who can get hurt. The shift from anger to raw honesty stopped Elena cold. She moved closer, her voice softening. I matter to you. You know you do. Then say it. Elena, say it, Luca. If I matter so much, if I'm worth all this protection and worry, then say what we both know is true. He looked at her for a long moment, something broken and desperate in his eyes. Then he pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like she might disappear. I love you, he said into her hair. I love you, and it's terrifying, and I don't know how to keep you safe while also giving you the freedom you need. So I overcompensate. I lock you away. I try to control everything because the alternative is watching you walk into danger I can't protect you from. Elena's eyes burned. I love you too, but I can't live like this, like a possession you're trying to protect. I know. Then we need to figure out how to do this differently. He pulled back enough to see her face. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out together. No more leaving for days without contact, no more treating me like I'm made of glass. And no more running off without telling Marco where you're going, Luca countered. Deal. They stood wrapped in each other, the argument bleeding into something softer but no less intense. Chicago was hell, Luca admitted quietly. Every hour away from you felt wrong. I kept wanting to call, to check in, but I thought giving you space was what you needed. What I need is you. Even when we're fighting, even when it's complicated. It's always going to be complicated. I know. She kissed him softly. I'm choosing it anyway. They made it to the bedroom still tangled together, words giving way to touch, argument transforming into something more primal. Afterwards, lying in the dark with Luca's heartbeat steady under her ear, Elena felt something settle. This was real. Messy and difficult and nothing like the fairy tale she'd once imagined, but real. She'd take real over perfect any day. The next morning, Luca woke her with coffee and a proposition. Marry me, he said. Elena blinked, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me. He set the coffee on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. Not because I'm holding you hostage this time. Not because of your father or money or strategy. Marry me because we love each other, and because I want the world to know you're mine. Her heart hammered. Luca, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I also know I've never been more certain of anything. He took her hand. I want to marry you, Elena. Really marry you. Choose me the way you've already chosen to stay. She stared at him. This man who'd kidnapped her and somehow become her entire world. The proposal was absurd, impossible. Everything about their relationship violated every rule of how love was supposed to work. And yet, I need time, she heard herself say. Not because I don't love you, but because I need to know this is real. That it's not just trauma or Stockholm syndrome or some twisted dependency. Something flickered across Luca's face, hurt, quickly masked. How much time? I don't know. A few months? Long enough to be sure. Sure of what? Of me? Or of yourself? Both. He nodded slowly and stood, his expression carefully neutral. Take all the time you need. Then he left the bedroom and Elena heard the apartment door close a few minutes later. She'd heard him, She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the flatness in his voice. But she couldn't say yes. Not yet. Not when a small voice in her head kept asking if she loved Luca Moretti or if she just loved the way he'd shattered her old life and given her permission to become someone new. The days that followed were strained. Luca was polite, attentive even, but something had shifted. He no longer pulled her close in the kitchen while she made coffee, no longer sought her opinion on business decisions, no longer looked at her like she was the answer to questions he hadn't known he was asking. He'd withdrawn. Not cruelly, but completely. Elena told herself it was fine, she'd asked for time, and he was giving it. This was healthy. This was smart. This was slowly killing her. 2 weeks after the proposal, she woke to find Luca already gone. A note on the kitchen counter. Business in Miami. Back Monday. It was Thursday. Elena crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then she pulled it out, smoothed it flat, and tucked it in her pocket, like the masochist she was apparently becoming. She spent the weekend rattling around the penthouse like a ghost. Marco was there, but silent as always. The space that had felt like home now felt like a mausoleum. On Sunday, unable to stand it anymore, Elena called her father. "Elena?" Robert Voss sounded older on the phone, wearier. "Is everything... Are you safe?" "I'm fine, Dad. I've been worried. When you hung up last time, I know, I'm sorry." She curled up on the couch, pulling a blanket around herself. "I just needed to hear your voice." There was a pause, then carefully. "Are you still with him?" She could lie. Should lie, probably. Instead, "Yes." "Elena, I love him, Dad." The silence that followed was deafening. "He kidnapped you," Robert finally said, his voice hollow. "He killed your fiancée. He held you hostage for weeks. And you're telling me you love him?" "I know how it sounds." "Do you? Do you hear how insane that is?" "Every day." Elena's voice cracked. "Every single day I ask myself if I'm broken somehow, if what happened to me twisted something fundamental. But then I'm with him. And it feels right in ways that nothing else ever has. And I don't know if that means I'm healing or if I'm just too damaged to see how wrong it all is." "Baby?" Her father's voice broke. "Please come home. Let me help you. We can find you a therapist, somewhere safe to stay. We can..." "I don't want to come home, Dad. That's the thing you don't understand. I chose this. I'm still choosing it. Because he's manipulated you into thinking you have no other choice. No. Because he's the first person who's ever been completely honest with me about who he is, what he does, what he wants. You spent years lying to me about where your money came from. Michael spent 2 years pretending to love me when really, he just wanted access to whatever fortune he thought you had. But Luca?" She laughed, bitter and raw. "Luca told me the truth even when it made him the villain. So you're with him out of what? Gratitude?" "I'm with him because when I'm with him, I'm the most honest version of myself I've ever been." More silence. Then her father sighed, the sound carrying years of regret and resignation. "I can't support this," he said quietly. "I can't pretend that what he did to you, what he took from you, is okay just because you've convinced yourself you love him. I'm not asking you to. But you're my daughter, and I love you. So even though every instinct I have is screaming that this is wrong, that you're in danger, that I should do something," his voice broke. "I'm going to respect your choice, even if I think it's the worst choice you've ever made." Tears tracked down Elena's face. "Thank you. But Elena, if you ever need me, if you ever want out, you call me, day or night. No questions asked. I'll come get you." "I know, Dad." They talked for a few more minutes about nothing, the weather, his new apartment in Toronto, whether she'd thought about going back to school. Normal conversation that felt surreal given everything underneath. When she hung up, Elena felt simultaneously better and worse. Her father's conditional acceptance helped, but his conviction that she was making a mistake burrowed under her skin like a splinter. Luca returned Monday evening carrying takeout from her favorite Thai place and acting like nothing was wrong. "Good weekend?" he asked, unpacking containers. "Fine." "Marco said you stayed in." "There wasn't anywhere I wanted to go." They ate in silence, punctuated only by the clink of silverware. Elena pushed pad thai around her plate and wondered when they'd become strangers who happened to share a bed.
I talked to my father, she said finally. Luca's fork paused. And? And he thinks I'm making a terrible mistake, that you've manipulated me, that I'm too damaged to see how wrong this is. He's probably right. Probably? She stared at him. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Elena? That he's wrong? That this is healthy and normal and exactly how relationships should start? Luca set down his fork. Your father's not wrong. I did manipulate you. I did take you against your will. I did create circumstances where falling for me was easier than resisting. Just because you chose to stay doesn't erase how we started. So you agree with him. You think this is a mistake. I think this is complicated. He met her eyes. I think we're two broken people who found something that works in all the wrong ways. I think if I'd met you at a gallery opening or a coffee shop, we'd probably never have looked twice at each other. But I didn't meet you that way. I took you. And that's always going to be the foundation we're building on. Kidnapping and coercion and Stockholm syndrome, no matter how real the feelings become. Then why propose? Her voice rose. Why ask me to marry you if you think this is fundamentally fucked up? Because I'm selfish, says. He said it simply, without shame. Because I love you, and I want to keep you, even knowing I probably shouldn't. Because the idea of you leaving destroys me in ways I didn't know I could still be destroyed. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. I can't do this. Do what? This limbo where you're distant and cold and act like you're just waiting for me to wake up and realize I've made a mistake. If you want me to leave, tell me. If you want me to stay, act like it. Luca stood too, his control finally cracking. I want you to be sure, Elena. I want you to choose me knowing exactly what that means. Not because I've manipulated you or isolated you or made you dependent, but because you genuinely want this life. This complicated, dangerous, morally questionable life. I do want it. Then marry me. The words hung between them like a challenge. Elena opened her mouth, closed it. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She swallowed hard. I can't. Not yet. Luca's expression went carefully blank. Then we're done here. What? You want me to choose between giving you space and showing you I want you to stay. But I asked you to marry me, and you said you needed time. So that's what I'm giving you, time and space to figure out what you actually want. When you decide, let me know. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Where are you going? Elena demanded. Out, to give you the space you keep saying you need. Luca. But he was already gone. Elena stood alone in the penthouse, surrounded by takeout containers and the wreckage of another fight, and realized with crystal clarity that she was losing him, not to another woman, not to violence or danger or any of the external threats she'd worried about. She was losing him to her own uncertainty. The question was whether that uncertainty was protecting her or destroying the best thing, broken as it was, that had ever happened to her. She didn't know the answer, but as the hours ticked by and Luca didn't return, as night deepened and his side of the bed stayed empty, Elena started to suspect that uncertainty was a luxury she could no longer afford. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the penthouse in shades of gold and regret, Elena had made her decision. She just hoped she hadn't realized it too late. Luca didn't come home that night. Or the next. Elena spent 48 hours cycling through anger, fear, and a gnawing certainty that she'd finally pushed too far. Marco remained his usual stoic self, offering no information beyond a terse, "He's fine," when she asked if Luca was okay. On the third morning, she found Marco in the kitchen making coffee. "Where is he?" she demanded. "Working." "Where, Marco?" The bodyguard studied her for a long moment, something like sympathy crossing his scarred features. "You want my advice?" "Yes." "Stop waiting for him to come back and go find him yourself." Elena blinked. "You know where he is?" "I always know where he is." Marco pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. An address in Brooklyn, some kind of warehouse district. "He's been there since Monday night, probably punishing himself for caring too much. Will you take me? I'll drive you. What happens after that is between you two." They made the drive in tense silence, Marco navigating Brooklyn's industrial streets with practiced ease. The warehouse he finally stopped in front of looked abandoned. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls.
The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Elena's stomach clenched. This is where he's been staying? This is where he goes when he needs to think. Marco killed the engine. Or when he needs to hurt something, usually both. She climbed out of the car before she could lose her nerve. The warehouse door wasn't locked. Inside, the space opened into a vast industrial cavern filled with workout equipment, a boxing ring, and what looked disturbingly like interrogation equipment in the far corner. And in the center of it all, Luca. He was shirtless, circling the heavy bag with predatory focus, his fists wrapped in tape. Sweat gleamed on his skin, highlighting the scars she'd traced with her fingers in the dark. He hadn't noticed her yet. Lost in the rhythm of punch after punch, each impact echoing through the empty space like gunshots. Elena watched him for a long moment, seeing clearly what she'd tried not to see before. This was who he was underneath the expensive suits and careful control. This was the violence he'd built his empire on, the capacity for harm that made men like Marco follow his orders without question. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt something settle in her chest, a certainty that had eluded her for weeks finally clicking into place. "You're going to break your hands if you keep that up," she called out. Luca spun, shock flickering across his features before he masked it. "How did you find me?" "Marco told me." "Marco's fired." "No, he's not." Elena walked closer, her footsteps echoing. "We need to talk." "I thought you needed space." "I was wrong. What I needed was to stop being afraid." He unwrapped his hand slowly, watching her approach like she might be a mirage. "Afraid of what?" "Of this. Of us. Of admitting that I don't want safe or normal or any of the things I thought I was supposed to want." She stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes. "I love you, Luca. Not because you kidnapped me, or because I have Stockholm Syndrome, or because I'm too damaged to know better. I love you because you're honest about who you are, because you keep your promises, because when you look at me, you see who I actually am instead of who you want me to be." "Elena, I'm not finished." She moved closer. "You asked me to marry you, and I said I needed time. But what I really needed was to understand why I was so afraid to say yes, and I figured it out these past 3 days without you." "What did you figure out?" "That I was waiting for permission. From my father, from society, from some invisible authority that would validate this completely insane relationship and tell me it's okay to love a man who started as my captor." Her voice cracked. "But I don't need permission. I just need to be brave enough to choose what I want instead of what I'm supposed to want." Luca's expression was unreadable. "And what do you want?" "You, this, all of it." She closed the remaining distance between them. "Ask me again." "Ask you what?" "You know what." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, and she felt him trembling. "Marry me," he said, his voice raw. "Marry me, Elena, not because it makes sense or because anyone approves, but because I love you and I want to spend whatever time we have building something real together." "Yes." The word hung between them for one perfect second. Then Luca kissed her like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. And Elena kissed him back with 3 days of fear and loneliness and certainty poured into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca pressed his forehead against hers. "You're sure?" he asked. "Completely. You understand what you're signing up for? The danger, the complications, the fact that my world doesn't have clean exits? I understand that I'd rather have a complicated life with you than a safe life without you." He laughed, the sound broken and relieved. "When? When what? When do you want to get married?" Elena smiled against his mouth. "Yesterday, tomorrow. I don't care. Whenever you want." "Tonight." She pulled back to look at him. "Tonight? Luca, we can't just be We can. I know a judge who owes me a favor. We get the license, he performs the ceremony, and by midnight you're Elena Moretti." His eyes searched hers. "Unless you want something big, traditional. Your father walking you down the aisle." "My father walked me down the aisle once. That didn't end well." She kissed him softly. "Tonight is perfect. Just us." They were married at 11 p.m. in the study of Judge Richard Hammond, a man who asked no questions and signed the certificate with practiced efficiency. Marco and his wife served as witnesses, the latter producing a small bouquet of white roses from seemingly nowhere. Elena wore a simple black dress. Luca wore the same clothes he'd been training in, though he'd at least put on a shirt. It was nothing like her first wedding. No church, no guests, no $12,000 dress. It was perfect.
I do, she said when asked, and meant it with everything she was. I do, Luca echoed, sliding a simple platinum band onto her finger. When the judge pronounced them married, Luca kissed her like they were alone in the universe, and Elena felt something fundamental shift. This was real. This was hers. This was the life she'd chosen with open eyes and a willing heart.
They spent their wedding night in the warehouse, making love on the mats beneath the boxing ring with the city's distant sounds filtering through broken windows. It was raw and desperate and nothing like the romantic night Elena had once imagined. It was theirs. Afterward, lying tangled together with Luca's jacket serving as their blanket, Elena traced the scars on his chest. "Tell me about this one," she said, touching a puckered mark near his ribs. "Knife fight in Moscow, 10 years ago. This one," a circular scar on his shoulder. "Bullet, Miami, 8 years ago. And this?" A long line across his abdomen. Luca caught her hand. "That one's not from a fight." "Then what?" "Appendix surgery when I was 16. Not everything's dramatic." She laughed, the sound echoing in the empty space. "I love you. I love you too." He pulled her closer. "Even though you're completely insane for marrying me." Takes one to know one. They dozed until dawn painted the warehouse windows gold. When Elena finally stirred, Luca was already awake, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What?" she asked. "Just making sure you're real, that this is real." "It's real." She kissed him. "Where do we go from here?" "Back to the penthouse. Figure out our actual life together. Maybe take a honeymoon somewhere. Nobody wants to kill me." "Does that place exist?" "Probably not, but we can try." They drove back to Manhattan as the city woke around them, Elena's left hand heavy with her new ring. She kept touching it, making sure it was real, that she hadn't dreamed the whole night. Marco dropped them at the penthouse with a rare smile. "Congratulations, Mrs. Moretti." The name sent a thrill through her. "Mrs. Moretti?" "Elena Moretti." A completely different person from Elena Voss, and she was okay with that. More than okay. They spent the day in bed, ignoring the outside world, existing only for each other. It felt stolen, precious, like something that couldn't possibly last. It couldn't. The call came at 6 p.m. Luca's phone rang with a tone Elena had never heard before. Urgent, demanding. He grabbed it immediately, his expression going from relaxed to predatory in an instant. "When?" he demanded. Then, "How many?" And finally, "I'm on my way." He was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with military efficiency. "What's wrong?" Elena asked, sitting up. "Problem at one of my properties. I need to handle it." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where people die if I don't move fast." He was strapping on a shoulder holster now, checking the gun with practiced hands. "Stay here. Marco's on his way up." "Luca, not now, Elena. I need to go." He kissed her hard and fast. "I'll be back as soon as I can." Then he was gone, leaving her alone in their bed with fear climbing her throat. She tried to wait, tried to be patient, but by 8 p.m. with no word, she was pacing. By 9, she was calling his phone and getting voicemail. By 10, she was ready to storm out and find him herself. Marco stopped her at the elevator. "Let me pass," she said. "Can't do that, Mrs. Moretti." The name that had thrilled her this morning now felt like a cage. He could be hurt. He could be in trouble. He can handle himself. What he can't handle is worrying about you while he's trying to stay alive. The words landed like a punch. Marco was right, and she hated it. She went back inside and tried to sleep. Failed. Tried to read. Failed at that too. Finally, she just sat by the window watching the city lights and wondering if this was what her life would be now. Waiting, worrying, never quite knowing if the man she loved would come home. Luca returned at 2 a.m. covered in someone else's blood. Elena had dozed off on the couch, but his entrance jolted her awake. She took in the blood spatter on his shirt, the cut above his eyebrow, the darkness in his eyes, and her stomach turned. "Are you hurt?" she asked, moving toward him. "Not my blood." "Whose then?" "People who made very bad decisions." He moved past her toward the bathroom. "I need to shower." She followed him, watching as he stripped off the ruined clothes and stepped under the spray. The water ran pink, then red, then finally clear. Elena grabbed a towel and waited. When he emerged, some of the darkness had left his eyes, but not all of it. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "Rivals thought they could move in on my territory while I was distracted. They were wrong." "Distracted by what?" His eyes met hers. "By you. By us. By playing house instead of maintaining the fear that keeps people in line." The word stung. "So this is my fault?" "No, it's mine for thinking I could have both, you and this life." He sat heavily on the bed. "They targeted the warehouse in Red Hook, killed 2 of my guys, would have taken the whole shipment if we hadn't gotten there in time." "What shipment?" "You don't want to know." "Stop doing that. Stop protecting me from the truth." But Luca looked at her, really looked, and she saw exhaustion and frustration and something that might have been fear. "Weapons," he said finally. "High-grade military equipment coming in from overseas. That shipment was worth $15 million and represented 6 months of negotiations. They knew exactly when and where to hit." "So someone told them." "Someone always tells them. Question is who?" He ran his hands through his wet hair. "I have a rat in my organization, Elena. Someone feeding information to my enemies, and until I find them, everyone's a target, including you." The fear she'd been suppressing all night crashed over her. "What do we do?" "I tighten security. I start cutting people loose until I find the leak. I make an example of whoever's responsible that'll remind everyone why crossing me is a death sentence." He said it so matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. This was the man she'd married, capable of calculated violence, of making people disappear, of ruling through fear. Elena sat beside him, taking his hand. "What can I do to help?" "Stay safe. Stay here. Let me handle this." "That's not helping. That's hiding." "Same thing in this case." He squeezed her hand. "I need to know you're protected, Elena. That's how you help, by not becoming another thing I have to worry about." It was a reasonable request. It was also a lie, and they both knew it. He didn't just want her safe. He wanted her separate from this part of his life, kept pristine and untouched by the violence that funded their lifestyle. But Elena had walked into this marriage with open eyes. She couldn't pretend now that some parts of Luca's world were too dirty to touch. "Okay," she said anyway, because fighting him while he was bleeding and exhausted seemed cruel. "I'll stay here." "Thank you." They lay down together, but sleep didn't come easily. Elena felt Luca's tension, heard his breathing stay irregular and alert. This was the cost of loving a man like him. Nights spent waiting, days spent wondering, the constant low-grade fear that one day he wouldn't come home at all. She'd chosen it. She had to live with it. The next week was tense. Luca was gone more than he was present, coming home at odd hours smelling of cigarettes and adrenaline. He didn't share details, but Elena could read the story in his clenched jaw and dark eyes. People were dying, and Luca was the one killing them. She tried to maintain normalcy, cooked meals that went cold waiting for him, read books she couldn't focus on, rearranged the apartment just to have something to do. But the walls felt closer every day, the luxury penthouse transforming back into a cage. On Thursday, she broke. "I need to get out," she told Marco. "Just for a few hours. Shopping, coffee, anything." Marco shook his head. Mr. Moretti said, "I know what he said. But I'm asking you, as someone who's been married," she'd learned about Marco's wife during the wedding, "would you want her locked up, even for her own safety? Or would you trust her to be smart and careful?" Something flickered in Marco's expression. "You fight dirty, Mrs. Moretti." "I learned from the best." He sighed. 2 hours. Public places only, and I'm with you the entire time. Deal. They ended up at the Museum of Modern Art, Elena's old haunt from her Columbia days. She wandered the galleries while Marco trailed behind, letting herself get lost in color and form and the kind of beauty that had nothing to do with violence. She was standing in front of a Rothko, letting the red and orange wash over her, when someone spoke behind her. "Elena Voss, didn't expect to see you here." She turned to find James Porter, her former boss from the museum, looking at her with complicated expression. "It's Elena Moretti now," she said automatically. "Right. I heard you got married, quite suddenly." His tone was carefully neutral. "After the tragic incident at your first wedding. James, I'm not judging, I'm just concerned. You disappeared from work, from your life. People were worried. I'm fine. Really. Are you?" He glanced at Marco, whose presence screamed bodyguard. "Because from here it looks like you're being followed by armed security, which isn't typical for fine arts graduates." Elena felt her face heat. "It's complicated. I'm sure it is." James paused, seeming to weigh his words. "Look, I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, but if you need help, if you need a way out, my door's open. No questions asked." The offer hung between them, well-meaning and impossible. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but I don't need help. I'm where I want to be." "Even if where you want to be comes with armed guards?" "Even then." James studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but the offer stands. If things change, if you need anything, you know where to find me." He walked away, leaving Elena staring at the Rothko with her certainty cracking. Did she look like someone who needed rescuing, someone trapped? Someone so isolated from her old life that former colleagues felt compelled to offer escape routes? "We should go," Marco said quietly. Elena nodded, her joy in the outing thoroughly killed. They were halfway to the exit when she heard it, a sound like fireworks, except fireworks didn't make people scream. Marco grabbed her arm, already moving, his other hand inside his jacket. "Stay close," he ordered. More sounds. Definitely gunshots. People were running now, scattering in panic. Marco pulled Elena behind a massive sculpture, his gun drawn, his phone already at his ear. "Shots fired at MoMA," he said rapidly. "West Gallery, get everyone here now." "What's happening?" Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Either very bad timing or very bad news. Marco's eyes scanned the crowd, looking for threats. "Stay down and stay quiet." She crouched behind the sculpture, making herself small, and wondered if this was random, a robbery, a mass shooting, terrible luck, or something worse. She got her answer when 3 men in tactical gear appeared in the gallery, moving with military precision. They weren't looking at the paintings. They were looking at people searching for someone, searching for her. "There," one of them said in accented English, pointing directly at their hiding spot. Marco fired first. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, and Elena clapped her hands over her ears. One of the men went down. The other 2 scattered, returning fire. "Run!" Marco shouted at her, providing cover. "East exit now!" Elena ran, her legs shaking, her breath coming in gasps. Behind her, more gunshots. She didn't look back. Couldn't look back, just focused on the exit sign glowing in the distance. She burst through the emergency door into an alley. A car was waiting, black SUV, engine running. The back door opened and someone grabbed her, pulling her inside before she could scream. The door slammed. The car accelerated. Elena tried to fight, but strong hands held her, and then a cloth pressed against her face, chemical sweet, and the world went dark. She woke to the worst headache of her life. Elena blinked, trying to focus, trying to remember. Museum, gunshots, Marco. Running. The car. She bolted upright, immediately regretting it as nausea swamped her. She was in some kind of warehouse, tied to a chair, a single bulb swinging overhead like something from a movie. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. "She's awake!" Elena's head snapped toward the voice. A man emerged from the shadows. Late 40s, expensive suit, cold eyes. He looked like someone who belonged at a corporate board meeting, not a kidnapping. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, her married name sounding like an insult. "Welcome. I apologize for the dramatic extraction, but your husband made subtlety impossible." "Who are you?" Her voice came out raspy. "Victor Constantine. Perhaps your husband mentioned me." Elena's blood turned to ice. She'd heard that name. Luca had mentioned it once in passing. A rival from his past, someone dangerous, Someone he thought was handled. Apparently not. "What do you want?" she asked. "What everyone wants, what's owed to me." Victor pulled up a chair, sitting backwards on it, his arms crossed over the back. "Your husband stole something from me 3 years ago. Territory, contacts, a very profitable shipping route. I've tried negotiating, I've tried competitive tactics. Nothing worked. So now we try leverage." "Meaning me." "Meaning you." He smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Luca Moretti's weakness, delivered gift wrapped. The museum was almost too easy. Your bodyguard put up admirable resistance, though. Shame about what happened to him. Elena's stomach dropped. "Marco is probably dead by now. My men are quite thorough." Victor stood, pacing around her chair. "But let's not dwell on unpleasantness. Here's how this works. I call your husband, tell him I have you, and he gives me what I want. If he's smart, you go home safely. If he's stupid—" He shrugged. "Well, wars have casualties." "Luca won't negotiate with you." "Oh, I think he will. You see, I've been watching you two for weeks. Followed you from the penthouse to that charming warehouse wedding. Very touching, by the way. And I noticed something interesting. Your husband is in love with you. Really, genuinely in love. Which means he'll do almost anything to get you back." Victor pulled out his phone and dialed. Put it on speaker. Luca answered on the first ring. "Who is this?" "Hello, Luca, it's been too long." Silence. Then, in a voice like death itself. "Constantine." "The very same. I have something of yours, someone rather. Your lovely wife, Elena. We've been getting acquainted. If you've heard her, she's fine, for now. But that changes the moment you stop being cooperative." Victor's tone was conversational, like discussing business over lunch. "I want Brooklyn back. The port contracts, the shipping routes, the whole territory you took from me. You have 24 hours to draw up the transfer paperwork. When it's done, you get your wife back." "Let me talk to her." Victor held the phone toward Elena. "Say hello to your husband, dear." "Luca?" Her voice shook despite her best efforts. "I'm okay. Elena, listen to me." Luca's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Are you hurt?" "No, but Marco—" "I know about Marco. I'm coming for you. Just hold on." "How touching," Victor interrupted, pulling the phone back. 24 hours, Luca. After that, I start sending her back to you in pieces." He ended the call. Elena's mind raced, fear and adrenaline warring in her blood. "He won't give you what you want." "Won't he?" "I saw how he looks at you, Mrs. Moretti. Like you're the only thing in the world that matters. Men like your husband, men who've built empires on ruthlessness, they don't love easily, but when they do—" Victor smiled. "They'll burn the world down to protect it." "You don't know him." "I know him better than you think. We came up together, once upon a time, before he decided he wanted what was mine." Victor moved toward the door. "Get comfortable. You're going to be here a while." He left, and Elena was alone in the dark with her thoughts and growing terror. She tested the restraints, professional work, no give. Looked for exits. One door, probably guarded. Searched for weapons. Nothing within reach. She was completely helpless, and she hated it. Hours crawled by. Elena dozed fitfully, waking at every sound. Once, someone brought water and a sandwich. She forced herself to eat, knowing she'd need strength for whatever came next. She thought about Luca, about their wedding night in the warehouse, about the way he'd looked at her when she'd said yes, about the life they'd barely started building before it all fell apart. She thought about dying in this warehouse, and whether Luca would trade his empire to save her. She hoped he wouldn't. She hoped he would. She didn't know what she hoped anymore. A commotion outside jerked her alert. Shouting, gunfire, the sounds of violence coming closer. The door burst open. Not Victor. Not his men. Luca, covered in blood, gun in hand, eyes wild. "Elena," he breathed, and it sounded like a prayer. He was across the room in seconds, cutting her restraints with a knife, pulling her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine." "Luca, how did you—" "Later. We need to move now." He pulled her toward the door, but Victor's voice stopped them. "Leaving so soon?" The rivals stood in the doorway, gun trained on them,
3 men behind him, similarly armed. Luca moved immediately, putting himself between Elena and the weapons. "This is between us, Constantine. Let her go." "Let her go?" Victor laughed. "After all the trouble I went through to acquire her? I don't think so." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Brooklyn. But now I think I'll take something else too. The satisfaction of watching you lose everything the way I did." Time seemed to slow. Elena saw Victor's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Luca tense, preparing to take the bullet meant for her, saw her entire future about to evaporate in gunfire and blood. She moved without thinking, grabbing Luca's gun from his holster and firing. The shot went wide. She'd never fired a gun before. But it was enough. Victor flinched. His men scattered, and Luca used the distraction to return fire with deadly accuracy. When the smoke cleared, Victor was down, bleeding from his shoulder. His men were either dead or running. Luca grabbed Elena's hand. "Now we run." They burst out of the warehouse into a Brooklyn night lit by sirens. Luca's car was waiting, Marco, bloodied but alive, in the driver's seat. "Go," Luca ordered, and Marco drove like they were being chased by demons. Because they were. In the back seat, Luca pulled Elena against him, his hand shaking as he held her. "I thought I lost you," he said into her hair. "When Constantine called, when I realized they had you, I'm okay. I'm here. I would have given him everything. Brooklyn, the ports, the entire empire. All of it for you." Elena pulled back to look at him. "I know. That makes me weak. That makes you human." He kissed her, desperate and relieved, and Elena kissed him back, tasting fear and blood and survival. They made it back to the penthouse as dawn broke. Marco disappeared to get medical attention. Luca and Elena stumbled inside, both running on adrenaline and shock. "We can't stay here," Luca said, already moving toward the bedroom. "Constantine's wounded, not dead. He'll come back with everything he has." "Then what do we do?" Luca stopped, turning to face her. "We end this, once and for all." "How?" His expression was grim. "The same way all wars end, with overwhelming force and a message no one can misunderstand." Elena understood what he wasn't saying. More people would die. More blood would be spilled. The violence she'd witnessed tonight was just the beginning, and she was the reason for all of it. "This is my fault," she whispered. "If I hadn't gone to the museum, this isn't your fault. This is Constantine's fault for thinking he could use you against me. And it's my fault for not eliminating him years ago when I had the chance." Luca crossed to her, tilting her chin up. "But we survived this together. You and me. Understand?" "Together," she agreed. But as Luca pulled her close as they stood in their penthouse watching the city wake up to a day they'd barely survived to see, Elena knew with cold certainty that their war was just beginning, and only one of them would walk away. They packed what they could carry in 20 minutes. Elena threw clothes into a bag while Luca made phone calls in rapid Italian, his voice clipped and urgent. She could hear the tension in every word, the way he barked orders and expected immediate compliance. This was the man who'd built an empire, cold, efficient, ruthless when necessary. "2 cars," he said, ending his last call. "Marco's taking us north. My cousin Angelo will meet us at the safe house with enough men to hold off an army." "Safe house where?" "Upstate. Place Constantine doesn't know about." Luca grabbed her bag and his own. "We stay there while I finish this." "Finish it how?" His eyes met hers, dark and determined. "However I have to." They left through the building's service entrance, Marco already waiting with 2 black SUVs idling at the curb. His shoulder was bandaged, his face pale from blood loss, but his hands were steady on the wheel. "You should be in a hospital," Elena said as she climbed into the back seat. "I should be dead," Marco corrected. "Constantine's men put 3 bullets in me, but I'm too stubborn to die, and too loyal to leave Mr. Moretti when he needs me." Luca slid in beside Elena, immediately pulling out his phone. "How many can Angelo bring?" 15, maybe 20 if he pulls from the Jersey crew. "Tell him 25. I want overwhelming force." Marco nodded and relayed the message to the driver of the second SUV through his radio. The convoy pulled into traffic, heading north as the city's morning rush began. Elena watched Manhattan disappear through the rear window, wondering if she'd ever see it again.
wondering if this was what her life would be now, running from one safe house to another, hiding while Luca waged war on her behalf. "You're quiet," Luca observed, trying to process everything. "Are you scared?" She considered lying, then decided against it. "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "I married you, didn't I?" "That was before someone kidnapped you and tried to use you as leverage." Elena turned to face him fully. "Luca, I knew what I was signing up for. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew loving you meant living in danger. I chose it anyway." "But you chose before you really understood what it meant. Then let me choose again now." She squeezed his hand. "I choose you. I choose this. Even knowing what Constantine did, what he might try again, I still choose you." Something in his expression cracked, the careful control slipping. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like she might disappear. "I'm going to kill him," he said quietly. "Not just wound him, not just send a message. I'm going to end Victor Constantine and everyone loyal to him, and I'm going to make sure the whole city knows what happens to people who threaten what's mine." Elena should have been horrified. Some part of her was. But a larger part, the part that had fired a gun for the first time in her life to save him, understood completely. "Okay," she said simply. They drove for 3 hours, leaving the city far behind for the kind of rural landscape Elena associated with summer camps and weekend getaways. The safe house turned out to be an old farmhouse set back from the road, surrounded by woods and completely invisible from any main thoroughfare. Angelo Moretti was waiting on the porch, tall, dark-haired, bearing enough resemblance to Luca that their relation was obvious. He pulled Luca into a fierce embrace the moment they arrived. "Cugino," he said, "when Marco called, I thought—" He broke off, switching to rapid Italian. Luca responded in kind, the conversation too fast for Elena to follow, even if she'd spoken the language. But she caught names, Constantine, Brooklyn, and what sounded like specific locations in the city. Finally, Angelo turned to her, his expression softening. "You must be Elena. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "Me too. Come inside, you look exhausted." The farmhouse interior was surprisingly modern, despite its rustic exterior. Updated kitchen, comfortable furniture, clearly maintained as more than just an emergency hideout. Angelo led them to a bedroom upstairs while his men established a perimeter outside. 25, like you asked, he told Luca. "All good men, all loyal. Armed?" "Enough to start World War III if necessary." Luca nodded. "I need to make some calls. Elena should rest." "I'm not tired," Elena protested, even though exhaustion was pulling at her bones. "You've been kidnapped, chloroformed, and traumatized in the last 12 hours. You're resting." Luca's tone brooked no argument. "I'll be downstairs planning. Try to sleep." He kissed her forehead and left with Angelo, their voices fading down the stairs. Elena sank onto the bed, her body finally acknowledging how much it had been through. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and the shakes that came from delayed shock. She must have dozed because when she opened her eyes again, the sun had shifted and Luca was sitting in a chair by the window, watching her. "How long was I out?" she asked, her voice rough. 4 hours. "You should have woken me. You needed rest." He moved to sit on the edge of the bed. "Besides, planning a war is loud. Better you sleep through it." Elena sat up, pushing hair from her face. "What's the plan?" "You don't need to know the details. Stop protecting me from your world, Luca. I'm in it whether you like it or not. Tell me what you're planning." He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Constantine has 3 main operations in the city, a shipping warehouse in Red Hook, a club in Midtown that's really a front for money laundering, and a legitimate import business in Queens. We're hitting all 3 simultaneously tomorrow night." "Hitting how?" "Burning the warehouse, raiding the club, seizing the import business, destroying his infrastructure and capturing his key people. The ones who talk get to live. The ones who don't." He shrugged. "That's going to start a war. The war already started when he took you. This is how we end it." Elena processed this, her mind working through implications. What about the police? 3 simultaneous attacks. They'll respond. We have people who will make sure their response is slow and confused. By the time they sort out what's happening, we'll be gone. And Constantine himself? Luca's expression went cold. He's mine, personally. The way he said it made Elena's skin prickle. You're going to kill him? Yes. Where? He has a penthouse in Tribeca, lives there with his mistress, and thinks he's untouchable. Luca's hands clenched. I'm going to show him exactly how wrong he is. When? After we destroy everything else he has. After he understands what it means to lose, then I'll end it. Elena took his hand, feeling the tension vibrating through him. I want to come with you. Absolutely not. Luca, no, Elena. You stay here where it's safe, where Angelo and his men can protect you. I'm not risking you again. I'm already at risk. Constantine knows who I am, what I mean to you. Hiding won't change that. It'll keep you alive while I handle this. Or it'll make me a sitting target if something goes wrong. Elena moved closer, making him look at her. I know you want to protect me, but you can't protect me and fight Constantine at the same time. You'll be distracted, worried, making decisions based on fear instead of strategy. So your solution is to put yourself in more danger? My solution is to be where you can see me, where you don't have to wonder if I'm safe or if someone's gotten to me. She touched his face. We're stronger together, Luca, you know that. We're also more vulnerable together. Maybe, but I'd rather be vulnerable with you than safe without you. He closed his eyes, jaw tight with indecision. If I let you come, you follow my orders exactly. No arguments, no hesitation. You do what I say when I say it. Agreed. And if things go wrong, if I tell you to run, you run. You don't look back. You don't try to help me. You just go. Luca, that's the condition, Elena. Take it or stay here. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she'd never leave him, that they'd survive together or not at all. But she could see the fear beneath his determination, the way loving her had made him vulnerable in ways he'd never been before. Okay, she agreed. I'll run if you tell me to. It was a lie, and they both probably knew it. But he nodded anyway, accepting the fiction because the alternative was leaving her behind. They spent the rest of the day in tense preparation. Angelo's men checked weapons, reviewed floor plans, coordinated timing. Elena stayed out of the way mostly, but she watched and listened and learned. These were soldiers in everything but name, men who'd chosen loyalty to Luca over conventional lives, who'd kill on his orders without hesitation. Some looked barely older than her. Others bore scars that told stories of violence survived. They're young, she said to Angelo during a quiet moment. Young men fight harder. They think they're invincible. He glanced at her. My cousin was like that once, before the world taught him otherwise. What changed him? Loss? Enough of it that he learned to be careful. Angelo's expression grew somber. But he's not being careful now. He's being reckless. Because of you. Because Constantine took me. Because he loves you. Which makes him dangerous in ways he hasn't been in years. Angelo met her eyes. Men like Luca, we build our strength on not caring too much, on being able to walk away from anything if necessary. But you're something he can't walk away from, and that terrifies him more than any enemy ever could. The words settled over Elena like a weight. She'd known intellectually that loving her made Luca vulnerable, but hearing it stated so plainly, seeing the concern in Angelo's eyes, made it real. Should I leave? She asked quietly. Would he be safer if I just disappeared? Safer maybe, but he'd be destroyed. Angelo shook his head. No, you stay. You fight beside him. You give him something to protect that's worth the risk. Just understand what you're asking of him every day you're together. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay beside Luca in the farmhouse bedroom, listening to his breathing, feeling the heat of his body against hers. You awake? He murmured. Can't turn my brain off. He rolled to face her, his eyes catching moonlight through the window. What are you thinking about? What Angelo said, about how loving me makes you reckless. Angelo talks too much. Is he wrong? Luca was quiet for a moment. No, he's not wrong. Before you, I made decisions based purely on strategy. What benefited my organization? What eliminated threats? What increased power? I was ruthless because I could afford to be. And now? Now every decision filters through one question. How does this affect Elena? Will this put her at risk? Will this make her safe? Will this give us a future? His hand found hers in the dark. It's made me sloppy, distracted. Exactly what Angelo said. Do you regret it? Not for a second. He pulled her closer. I'd rather be reckless and in love than safe and alone, even if it gets me killed. Don't say that. It's true. You're worth dying for, Elena. But more than that, you're worth living for. Worth changing for. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Worth being better for. Tears pricked her eyes. I love you. I love you too. Which is why tomorrow, no matter what happens, I need you to promise me something. What? If I tell you to run, if things go wrong and I give you that order, you run and you don't look back. You find Marco or Angelo and you let them get you somewhere safe, somewhere far from all of this. I already promised. I need to hear it again. I need to know that if the worst happens, you'll survive. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she'd never leave him, that she'd fight beside him until the end, but the raw need in his voice stopped her. I promise, she whispered, and hated herself for the lie. They made love slowly, desperately, like people who knew tomorrow might change everything. And when it was over, when they lay tangled together in the dark, Elena memorized every detail. The way his heartbeat felt against her palm, the rhythm of his breathing, the weight of his arm across her waist. Just in case. Morning came too fast. Elena woke to find Luca already dressed, strapping on body armor over a black shirt. It's time, he said. She dressed quickly in clothes Angelo had provided, dark jeans, black sweater, boots that could run if necessary. Luca helped her into a Kevlar vest, his hands gentle despite the violence they were preparing for. Remember, he said, adjusting the straps, you stay close to me. You do what I say, and if things go wrong, I run. I know. He kissed her hard, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Let's go end this. The convoy assembled in the farmhouse driveway. 5 SUVs, 25 men, enough weapons to outfit a small army. Angelo went over the plan one last time, assigning teams to each target. Red Hook team leaves now, he said, checking his watch. Midtown 5 minutes later. Queens 10 minutes after that. All hits at exactly 10 p.m. That gives us 30 minutes before police response gets organized. Luca would lead the team hitting Constantine's Tribeca penthouse. Elena would be with him, along with Marco and 4 others. The rest would scatter after completing their objectives, meeting at predetermined locations to regroup. Questions? Angelo asked. Silence. Then let's go to work. They drove back to the city as the sun set, transforming Manhattan into a glittering landscape of light and shadow. Elena watched it approach, this city she'd lived in her whole life, and wondered how many people inside it had any idea of the violence about to unfold in their streets. Luca was on the phone constantly, coordinating with his teams, confirming intel on Constantine's location. The man was home. Surveillance had confirmed it, him and his mistress and 2 bodyguards. Overconfident despite being shot just days ago. That overconfidence would cost him everything. 10 minutes, Marco announced as they approached Tribeca. Luca ended his call and turned to Elena. Last chance to change your mind. Stay in the car. Let us handle this. Not a chance. Stubborn woman. You knew that when you married me. He almost smiled. Yes, I did. They parked 2 blocks from Constantine's building. The team assembled on the sidewalk, weapons hidden but accessible, moving with the kind of casual confidence that made pedestrians unconsciously step aside. Luca's phone buzzed. He checked it, nodded. Red Hook is a go. Warehouse is burning. 2 minutes later, Midtown secured. Club's ours. 3 minutes after that, Queen's team in position. Moving on the import business now. Our turn, Luca said. They entered Constantine's building through the service entrance, taking out the security guard with a silenced shot before he could raise an alarm. Marco and another man secured the lobby while Luca led the rest toward the elevator. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor, accessible only by private elevator requiring a key card. Marco had acquired one, Elena didn't ask how, and they rode up in tense silence. The doors opened directly into Constantine's home. Marble floors, modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And standing in the center of it all, drink in hand, Victor Constantine. He didn't look surprised. "Luca," he said calmly, "right on time." Elena felt Luca tense beside her. "You were expecting us." "Of course. You're nothing if not predictable when it comes to revenge." Constantine sipped his drink. "My operations are burning as we speak, aren't they? Very thorough. Where are your bodyguards?" "I sent them away. Seemed pointless to let them die for nothing." Constantine set down his glass. "This was always going to end with just you and me. Might as well skip the theatrics." Luca's hand moved to his gun, but Constantine raised a hand. "Wait. Before you kill me, and we both know you will, I have a proposition. I'm not interested in negotiations." "Not a negotiation, a trade." Constantine's eyes shifted to Elena. "I let you kill me without a fight, and in exchange, you let my mistress walk away. She had nothing to do with our war. She's upstairs, terrified, waiting to see if she lives or dies. Give me your word she walks away unharmed, and I won't resist." Luca's jaw clenched. "Why would I agree to that?" "Because, despite everything, you're not a monster who kills innocent people. Your wife," he nodded at Elena, "she's proof of that. You could have destroyed her to hurt her father, but you didn't. You fell in love instead." Constantine smiled sadly. "So I'm betting you'll extend the same mercy to someone I love." The room fell silent. Elena could feel Luca's internal struggle, the way this request cut against his desire for absolute vengeance. "Your mistress goes free," Luca said finally. "She has 1 hour to pack and leave the city. If I ever see her again, that mercy ends. Understood?" "Understood." Constantine looked almost relieved. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This isn't mercy. It's just not cruelty." "From a man like you, that's the same thing." Constantine straightened, accepting his fate with surprising dignity. "Do it quickly. I don't want her to hear." Luca raised his gun, but before he could fire, Elena spoke. "Wait." Both men turned to look at her. "What if there was another way?" she said, her heart racing. "What if instead of killing him, we just ended it? Take everything he has, exile him from the city, make it clear he can never come back, but let him live." "Elena," Luca's voice carried a warning. "I know he kidnapped me. I know he threatened us. But killing him won't change any of that. It'll just add more blood to a situation that's already drowning in it." "He took you," Luca said flatly. "He had men shoot Marco. He would have cut you into pieces if I hadn't given him what he wanted. I know, and I'll never forget that. But I also know that if you kill him now, in front of me, it changes something between us. Makes me complicit in murder in a way I can't take back." Constantine watched this exchange with something like fascination. Luca looked torn between fury and understanding. "This is what you want?" Luca asked Elena. "You want me to let him walk away?" "I want you to be the man who can choose mercy over vengeance, the man who's trying to be better." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "I know what he deserves, but I also know what you deserve, a chance to build something that isn't founded on killing everyone who crosses you." Luca stared at her, his weapon still trained on Constantine, war waging behind his eyes. Finally, he lowered the gun. "You have 1 hour," he told Constantine. "Get your woman and get out of this city. Go somewhere I'll never have to think about you again. Europe, Asia, I don't care. But if I ever see you or hear your name in connection with New York business, this mercy ends, permanently." Constantine looked genuinely shocked. "You're serious?" "My wife asked me to let you live, so you live. But your empire is done. Your operations are ashes. Your men will scatter or die. You get to walk away with nothing but your life and whoever you love. That's the deal." "I accept." Constantine moved toward the stairs, then paused. "For what it's worth, Luca, she's good for you, better than you deserve." "I know." Constantine disappeared upstairs. Luca holstered his weapon and turned to Elena, his expression unreadable. "Did I just make a huge mistake?" he asked. "Maybe. Or maybe you just made the first step toward something better. He could come back, rebuild, try again." "He could, but I don't think he will," Elena took his hand. He looked tired, Luca, like a man who's done fighting, or like a man who's planning his revenge. Then we'll deal with it if it happens, together. Luca pulled her against him, holding her tight. You're too good for this world, for my world. Then maybe it's time to find a different world. They left the penthouse 10 minutes later, passing Constantine and his mistress on their way out. The woman was crying, clutching a single suitcase. Constantine met Luca's eyes one last time, nodded once, and led her toward the elevator. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm, unaware that a war had just ended, not with bloodshed, but with mercy. Angelo was waiting at the rendezvous point, his expression confused when he saw Luca. Did you? It's done, Luca said simply. Constantine's leaving the city. His operations are destroyed. The war's over. But he's alive? Elena asked me to let him go, so I let him go. Angelo looked at his cousin like he'd never seen him before. Then, slowly, he smiled. Maybe there's hope for you yet, Cugino. They drove back to the farmhouse as reports came in. The warehouse in Red Hook was still burning. The club in Midtown had yielded 3 of Constantine's lieutenants, all now under Luca's control. The import business in Queens was being cataloged and absorbed into Luca's organization. By morning, everything Constantine had built was Luca's, except the man himself. Back at the farmhouse, Elena finally allowed herself to breathe. They'd survived. All of them. And somehow, impossibly, they'd done it without Luca becoming the monster she knew he could be. No regrets? She asked him as they stood on the porch watching dawn break. Ask me in a month when we see if Constantine keeps his word. He will. How can you be so sure? Because you gave him the one thing he didn't expect, a chance to leave with what matters most. He won't waste that. Luca pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I hope you're right. And if I'm wrong, the next time I don't hesitate. Elena nodded, accepting this truth about the man she'd married. Mercy once, but not twice. That was the best she could hope for in his world. Their world now. What happens next? She asked. Now? We go back to the city. We rebuild what needs rebuilding. We consolidate what we took from Constantine. And we figure out how to live a life that's not constantly running from crisis to crisis. Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. They stood together as the sun rose, 2 people who'd found each other in violence and somehow, impossibly, chosen love instead. The war was over. Now they just had to figure out how to live with peace. Peace, Elena discovered, was harder than war. The first week back in the city felt surreal. Luca's organization absorbed what remained of Constantine's operations with brutal efficiency. Territory that had been contested for years suddenly fell under unified control. Money flowed differently. Power dynamics shifted. And through it all, Elena watched her husband transform from a man at war into something she couldn't quite define yet. He was restless. She found him at 3 a.m. on their 5th night back, standing at the penthouse windows, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. Can't sleep? She asked, wrapping a blanket around herself. Waiting for the other shoe to drop. What shoe? Constantine's revenge. A new rival seeing weakness in my mercy. Something. He took a sip, grimacing. War, I understand. This quiet. I don't trust it. Elena moved to stand beside him, following his gaze over the sleeping city. Maybe you don't have to trust it. Maybe you just have to live in it and see what happens. That's not how survival works in my world. Then maybe it's time to consider a different world. He turned to look at her, something flickering in his expression. What are you saying? I'm saying you won, Luca. You have more territory than you've ever had, more money, more power. At some point, you have to ask yourself what you're actually building toward. I'm building security, protection. For who? Us? Because I don't feel more secure surrounded by men with guns and operations that could get raided any day. I feel like we're waiting for the next disaster. Luca set down his glass with careful precision. What do you want from me, Elena? I want you to consider that maybe winning doesn't mean controlling everything. Maybe it means having the courage to walk away. Walk away from what I've built? Just abandon it? Not abandon. Transform. She turned to face him fully. You're brilliant, Luca. You built an empire from nothing. Imagine what you could do with that same intelligence and drive in legitimate business, real estate, investments, things that don't require armed guards and midnight escapes. You're asking me to go straight. I'm asking you to imagine a future where we don't spend every night wondering if this is the one where everything falls apart. He studied her for a long moment. You knew who I was when you married me. I did, and I still do. But I also know who you could be. She took his hands. The man who let Constantine live, that's not the old Luca Moretti. That's someone new, someone better. And I want to see who that person becomes if you give him a chance. Luca pulled her against him, resting his chin on her head. It's not that simple. I have obligations, people who depend on me, enemies who'd see any withdrawal as weakness. Then make them understand its evolution, not retreat. Hand off operations to people you trust. Keep financial stakes if you want, but step back from the day-to-day violence. Give yourself room to be something more than what circumstances made you. You make it sound easy. It won't be. But nothing worth having ever is. They stood together in the dark, the city sprawling below them, full of possibilities neither had considered before. The next morning, Luca called a meeting. Elena wasn't invited, but she heard about it from Marco afterward. 20 of Luca's most trusted men assembled in the warehouse where they'd gotten married. The same space where Luca had trained for wars, now being repurposed for something else entirely. He told them he's stepping back, Marco said, his tone carefully neutral. Not abandoning the business, but transitioning to more legitimate operations. Angelo will handle day-to-day operations. Others get more responsibility, more territory. How did they take it? Mixed. Some saw opportunity, others saw weakness. Marco paused. One man spoke against it pretty vocally, said Luca was going soft, that you'd ruined him. Elena's stomach clenched. What happened? Luca thanked him for his honesty and told him he had 24 hours to find new employment. No hard feelings, but no tolerance for dissent. Marco almost smiled. The man apologized within an hour and asked to stay on, said he'd misspoken. And Luca let him? Gave him a second chance, like you gave Constantine. Marco's expression grew thoughtful. You're changing him, Mrs. Moretti. Whether that's good or bad, I can't say yet, but it's definitely happening. Change came slowly, then all at once. Luca started sleeping through the night, started coming home for dinner more often than not, started talking about futures that extended beyond the next crisis. But it wasn't seamless. 2 weeks after the meeting, one of Luca's warehouses was hit. Not by Constantine, he'd vanished to Monaco according to intelligence reports, but by opportunistic rivals testing boundaries. 3 men dead, $500,000 in merchandise stolen. Elena found Luca in his study afterward. The darkness she'd hoped had receded firmly back in his eyes. I have to respond, he said without preamble. I let this slide. Everyone thinks I'm vulnerable. How will you respond? How I always have. With overwhelming force that makes an example no one forgets. Or, Elena said carefully, you could respond differently. Show that strength doesn't always mean violence. They killed my men, Elena. I know, and that's terrible. But killing their men in return just perpetuates the cycle. She sat across from him. What if instead of violence you destroyed them financially, took their businesses, their reputation, their ability to operate, left them alive but broken? That takes time. Violence sends an immediate message. Violence sends the same message you've always sent, but you're trying to be different now, so show them different. Luca stared at her, jaw tight. You're asking me to fight with one hand tied behind my back. I'm asking you to fight smarter instead of harder. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of what she was asking. Finally, Luca picked up his phone. Get me everything on the Castellano crew, financial records, property holdings, every business they run. I want to know where every dollar comes from. When he hung up, his expression was grim. This better work. It will. It took 3 weeks, but Luca dismantled the Castellano operation without firing a shot. Bank accounts frozen through contacts in finance. Legitimate businesses exposed for code violations and shut down. Key personnel arrested on outstanding warrants Luca's people had quietly ensured were enforced. By the time he was done, the Castellano crew was broken, scattered, their leadership begging for mercy. Luca granted it, on the condition they left New York and never returned. "You're getting good at this," Angelo observed, reviewing the aftermath. "Destruction without bodies. Very civilized." "Doesn't feel as satisfying," Luca admitted. "Nothing ever does at first. But give it time. You might find you sleep better." He did. Slowly, incrementally, the tension that had defined Luca for decades began to ease. 3 months after Constantine's exile, Luca came home with news. "I'm selling the Brooklyn operations," he announced over dinner. Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Brooklyn. The ports, the warehouses, all of it. Selling to a consortium that'll run it legitimately. They get the infrastructure, I get a 30% stake in the profits, and complete deniability on operations." "That's significant. That's half my empire." He met her eyes. "You said I should transform instead of control. This is me transforming." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He took her hand across the table. "Because you were right. I can't build a future worth having while holding on to a past built on violence, so I'm letting go, piece by piece." Over the following months, more pieces fell away. The club in Midtown was sold to a legitimate entertainment company. The import business was restructured and cleaned up. Its less savory operations shut down entirely. Territory was ceded, not through weakness, but through calculated withdrawal. Luca Moretti was systematically dismantling the empire he'd spent decades building and replacing it with something else. He invested in real estate, buying and renovating buildings in neighborhoods everyone else had written off. He funded small businesses in communities that needed them. He even established a foundation, anonymously at first, then openly when Elena convinced him transparency built better trust. "You're becoming legitimate," Angelo said one evening, the observation carrying both admiration and something like mourning. "I'm becoming different," Luca corrected. "Whether that's better or worse, we'll see." But not everyone approved of the transformation. 6 months into Luca's transition, Marco came to the penthouse with troubling news. "There's been talk," he said, his expression grave. "Some of the old guard, people who've been with you for years, they're unhappy with the changes." "How unhappy?" Luca asked. "Unhappy enough to reach out to outside interests, seeing if there's appetite for a leadership change." Elena felt ice in her veins. "They're planning a coup?" "Not exactly. More like exploring options." Marco looked uncomfortable. "They think you've gone soft, that Elena's influence has made you weak." "Names," Luca demanded. Marco rattled off 5, all men Elena recognized from meetings and gatherings, men who'd served Luca loyally for years. "What do you want to do?" Marco asked. Luca was quiet for a long moment, then, "Set up a meeting, all 5 of them, tomorrow night, the warehouse." After Marco left, Elena turned to her husband. "What are you planning?" "Honestly, I don't know yet." He looked tired, older than she'd ever seen him. "Part of me wants to make an example, show what happens when people question my authority. And the other part wants to understand why they feel that way. What I'm doing wrong that makes loyal men consider betrayal." "That's growth," Elena said softly. "That's exhausting," Luca corrected, "but probably necessary." The meeting was tense. 5 men who'd built their lives around Luca Moretti's empire, now facing the man they'd apparently lost faith in. Elena watched from the shadows, Marco beside her, as Luca addressed his would-be mutineers. "Marco tells me you've been making inquiries," he said, his voice calm. "Testing the waters for new leadership. Anyone want to explain why?" Silence. Then one man, Carlo, a soldier who'd been with Luca for 15 years, spoke up. "Because you're not the man we signed up to follow. That man was ruthless, decisive. He didn't hesitate to do what was necessary. And now? Now you negotiate. You show mercy. You let enemies walk away." Carlo's voice rose. "You let your wife convince you to abandon everything you built. And we're supposed to just go along with it?" "You think Elena's made me weak," Luca said flatly. "I think she's made you someone we don't recognize." Luca nodded slowly. "You're right." The admission seemed to shock everyone, Elena included. "I'm not the man you signed up to follow," Luca continued. That man was building toward nothing but more violence, more territory, more of the same until someone killed him or he died alone and paranoid. You're right that Elena changed that. She showed me there was something worth building toward besides just survival. He paced the warehouse floor, every eye following him. Here's what I'm offering. Anyone who wants the old Luca Moretti, the old way of doing things, you can have it. Angelo's running operations that still require that approach. Work for him. Make your money. Live that life. I won't stop you. But you don't get to work for me and question the direction I'm taking. And if we think your direction is suicide, another man asked, then leave. Right now. No hard feelings, no retaliation. Take a severance package and find someone else to follow. Luca's expression hardened slightly. But if you stay, you're all in. No more questioning, no more outside inquiries, no more undermining what I'm building. We clear? The 5 men exchanged glances. Then, one by one, 4 of them nodded. Carlo hesitated. What if we think you're making a mistake? We're supposed to just watch you destroy everything. I'm not destroying anything. I'm transforming it into something that might actually last. Luca moved closer to him. You've been with me 15 years, Carlo. In that time, how many men have we lost? How many friends, soldiers, people we cared about, dead because of this life? That's the cost of doing business. What if it doesn't have to be? What if there's a way to have power and money and security without constantly looking over your shoulder waiting for the bullet with your name on it? You really believe that's possible? I'm willing to try. Question is whether you are. Carlo looked at Luca for a long moment, then at the other 4 men, then at the warehouse around them, site of so many meetings, so much history. I'll stay, he said finally. But I reserve the right to say I told you so if this all goes to hell. Luca smiled. Fair enough? The meeting dissolved, the 5 men leaving with what looked like renewed, if cautious, loyalty. When they were gone, Luca pulled Elena from the shadows. You heard all that? Every word. She touched his face. I'm proud of you. For what? Not killing people who were plotting against me? For choosing to lead differently. For giving them a choice instead of just making an example. Carlo's right, you know. This could all blow up in my face. It could, but it might not. And I'd rather try and fail than never try at all. Luca pulled her close, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. How did I get so lucky to find you? You didn't find me. You kidnapped me. Best decision I ever made. She laughed against his chest, and the sound echoed in the empty warehouse where violence used to reign. A year after Constantine's exile, Elena found something that changed everything. 2 pink lines. She stared at the pregnancy test, her hands shaking, mind racing. A baby. She was going to have Luca's baby. The timing was terrible. They were still transitioning operations, still finding their footing in this new life. A child would complicate everything. A child would also change everything. She found Luca in his study, reviewing contracts for a new real estate development in Queens. Legitimate business, paper trails that would survive any audit. The kind of work that bored him sometimes but didn't wake him up at 3 a.m., wondering if tonight was the night someone came for revenge. We need to talk, she said. He looked up, immediately alert. What's wrong? Nothing. Maybe. I don't know yet. She sat across from him. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Luca was around the desk, pulling her up, his hands framing her face. You're sure? 3 tests, all positive. When? I don't know exactly. A few weeks, maybe? He kissed her, deep and desperate and full of something that looked like joy and terror mixed together. We're having a baby, he said, like testing the words. We're having a baby, Elena confirmed. Are you happy? Scared? Both? Both, definitely both. He sat heavily, pulling her onto his lap. A year ago, this would have been impossible. Bringing a child into that life, into constant danger, I never would have risked it. And now I'm terrified for completely different reasons, like whether I'll be a good father, whether I can give our child a normal life, whether you're worthy of this, Elena finished. You are, you know, worthy of this, of happiness, of a family. You don't know that. I do. Because I've watched you change, Luca. I've seen you choose mercy over vengeance, transformation over control, peace over power. That man, the one you're becoming, that man will be an amazing father. Tears tracked down his face, and he didn't bother hiding them. I want this so much it scares me. Me too. They sat together in the study, holding each other and the fragile possibility of a future they'd barely dared imagine. The pregnancy changed Luca in ways Elena hadn't expected. He became obsessively protective, insisting on security details she found excessive. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked 1,000 questions, read books on pregnancy and childbirth like he was preparing for battle, and he accelerated the transition away from his criminal empire. I want to be completely legitimate before the baby comes, he told Angelo during a planning session Elena overheard. No operations that could blow back on my family. Nothing that puts them at risk. That's not realistic, Angelo argued. Some things take time to untangle. Then untangle them faster. I don't care what it costs. I want clean hands before I hold my child. It was an impossible goal, and they both knew it. Years of criminal enterprise couldn't be erased in months. But Luca tried anyway, working 18-hour days to restructure, sell off, and legitimize everything he could. Elena finally confronted him at 7 months pregnant, when she found him in his study at 2 a.m., still working. You're going to kill yourself, she said. I'm trying to protect our family. By working yourself to death? By being so stressed you barely sleep, barely eat, barely breathe? She sat beside him. The baby needs you alive and present, not perfect and absent. I need to finish this. Why? What happens if there's still one questionable business deal when the baby comes? Does that make you a bad father? Does that doom our child? It means I failed. It means you're human. Elena took his hands. You've done more in 8 months than most people do in a lifetime. You've transformed an empire, chosen a better path, built something worth having. That's enough, Luca. You're enough. He broke. The stress and fear and desperate need to be worthy finally overwhelming him. Elena held him while he cried. This man who'd killed and conquered and built empires, reduced to human vulnerability by the prospect of fatherhood. I'm terrified I'll ruin them, he admitted, that my past will poison their future, that they'll grow up knowing what I was and hate me for it. Then we'll be honest. Age appropriately, carefully, but honest. We'll tell them you made mistakes, did things you regret, but that you changed, that you chose to be better. And we'll show them every day what that looks like. What if it's not enough? Then we'll try harder, together. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday in March. 6 pounds and 4 ounces of screaming, perfect humanity. Luca held her like she was made of glass, tears streaming down his face, and Elena watched the last pieces of the old Luca Moretti crumble away. She's perfect, he whispered. She is, Elena agreed. What should we name her? They discussed this, thrown around dozens of options. But now, looking at their daughter, Elena knew exactly what felt right. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. Luca looked at her, understanding the weight of that choice. Hope for a better future. Hope that change was possible. Hope that love could redeem even the darkest past. Hope Moretti, he said, testing it. Yes, that's perfect. They brought Hope home to a penthouse transformed. Where once there'd been expensive art and cold modern furniture, now there were soft surfaces and gentle colors. Where Marco had stood guard, now a nanny waited to help. Where violence had once been the language of power, now lullabies filled the air. The first months were exhausting and beautiful. Sleepless nights, constant feedings. The particular terror of being responsible for someone so small and fragile. But Luca took to fatherhood with the same intensity he'd once brought to empire building. He changed diapers. He walked the floors at 3 a.m. when Hope wouldn't sleep. He sang to her in Italian, soft lullabies his mother had sung to him. And slowly, piece by piece, he let the last of his empire go. The final warehouse was sold 6 months after Hope's birth. Angelo took over the remaining operations that couldn't be made fully legitimate, running them independently while Luca kept a financial stake but no operational control. You're really doing it, Angelo said during their last official meeting. Going completely clean. I have to, for her, for Elena. for the life I want instead of the one I fell into. Any regrets? Luca thought about this. Regret how it started? Yes. Regret where it led me? Not for a second. They embraced, and Elena watched two men who'd built an empire together say goodbye to what they'd been so they could become what they needed to be. Hope's first birthday fell on a Saturday. They celebrated at the farmhouse upstate, the same place where they'd hidden from Constantine's war. But now it was transformed into something else, a family home, complete with a garden Elena had planted and a porch swing Luca had installed. Angelo came with his wife. Marco brought his family. A handful of others who'd made the transition to legitimate work joined them. No talk of territory or operations, just food and laughter and watching a 1-year-old girl destroy a cake with gleeful abandon. She's got your eyes, Marco observed to Luca. Poor thing, she deserves better. She's got Elena's spirit, though. That'll serve her well. Elena watched Luca with their daughter, saw the absolute devotion in every gesture, and felt something settle in her chest. They'd made it. Against all odds, through violence and transformation and the kind of change that should have been impossible, they'd actually made it. That night, after Hope was asleep and their guests had left, Elena and Luca sat on the porch watching the stars. Do you miss it? She asked. The power, the control, the empire? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes I missed the certainty, knowing exactly who I was and what I was building toward. This, he gestured at the peaceful night, this is terrifying in different ways. I don't have armed guards, or intimidation, or fear keeping me safe. Just hope that we've made the right choices. But do you miss it enough to go back? Not for a second. He took her hand. Because going back would mean losing this. Losing you, losing hope, losing the person I'm becoming. And that person might be uncertain and vulnerable and occasionally terrified, but he's also happy. Really, genuinely happy. The old Luca never had that. The old Luca never had a choice. No, but he also never would have been brave enough to walk away if he had one. That took you. Elena leaned against him, fitting into the space beneath his arm that felt designed for her. I kidnapped you right back, you know. Took you from your empire and made you into someone new. Best kidnapping ever. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night sky and listening to Hope's soft breathing through the baby monitor. What do you think she'll be when she grows up? Elena mused. Not what I was. That's all I care about. She might surprise you, might want to know about your past, understand where she came from. Then we'll tell her the truth, that her father made terrible choices, hurt people, built an empire on violence, but that he loved her mother enough to change, that he wanted better for his daughter than what he'd had. Luca paused. Think that'll be enough? I think the fact that you're worried about it means you're already the father she needs. 2 years passed in the quiet rhythm of family life. Luca's legitimate businesses flourished. The real estate holdings appreciated. The foundation he'd established grew to fund programs across the city. He was becoming known not as a crime lord who'd gone straight, but as a philanthropist and developer who'd overcome a troubled past. The story got sanitized in the retelling. Elena watched it happen, watched journalists and society columnists craft a narrative that made Luca's transformation seem inevitable and noble rather than desperate and hard-won. They're making you into someone you're not, she observed one evening, reading yet another puff piece. They're making me into someone I can live with being, close enough. Hope grew into a toddler full of questions and fearlessness. She had Luca's dark eyes and Elena's stubborn chin, and she ran both her parents ragged with her endless energy. She's going to be trouble, Marco predicted during one visit. She's already trouble, Luca said fondly, watching Hope attempt to climb furniture she definitely shouldn't be climbing. But she's our trouble. On Hope's second birthday, Elena found Luca in their bedroom, holding something small and worn. What's that? She asked. He opened his hand to reveal a ring, the simple platinum band he'd given her during their warehouse wedding. I was thinking we should do it again, properly this time. We're already married. We're married in a ceremony that lasted 5 minutes in a judge's study. I want to marry you again, in front of people we care about, with Hope there to see it. I want to do it right. Elena's eyes burned. You want a wedding.
I want to stand in front of everyone we know and choose you again, publicly, proudly, without any shadow of coercion or Stockholm syndrome or questions about whether it was real. He took her hands. Marry me again, Elena. Let me do this one thing right. You've done everything right. Then let me do this anyway. They were married on a Saturday in September in the garden Elena had planted at the farmhouse. 50 people attended, friends, family, people who'd made the journey with them from violence to peace. Hope served as flower girl, scattering petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Angelo stood as best man. Sarah Chen, Elena's old friend who'd eventually forgiven her once she understood the full story, was maid of honor. Elena wore a simple white dress, nothing like the elaborate gown from her first wedding. Luca wore a dark suit and an expression of such open joy it took her breath away. When the officiant asked if she took this man, Elena said, "I do," with her whole heart. When Luca said the same, his voice broke on the words. They kissed to applause and laughter, and Hope's delighted squealing, and Elena felt the last piece of their old story fall away. This was their new beginning, not built on kidnapping and coercion and Stockholm syndrome, but on choice and change and the hardest kind of love, the kind that demanded growth. The reception lasted until dark, full of dancing and toasts, and the kind of joy that came from surviving what should have destroyed you. Robert Voss attended, walking Elena down the aisle with tears in his eyes. They'd rebuilt their relationship slowly, painfully, through a year of difficult conversations and honest reckonings. He'd never fully forgive Luca, and Luca would never fully trust him, but they'd found a way to coexist for Elena and Hope's sake. "I was wrong about him," Robert admitted during their dance. "Not about how it started. That was still wrong. But about who he could become. I didn't think people like him could change." "People like him?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "People like me," her father corrected quietly. "I stole from him to give you a better life, and it nearly destroyed everyone. He stole you to get revenge, and somehow it saved you both. I don't know what that means, but I'm trying to accept that the universe works in ways I can't predict. It means we're all just doing the best we can with what we're given, and hoping it's enough, and knowing that sometimes it is." As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Elena found Luca standing at the edge of the property, Hope asleep against his shoulder watching the stars. "What are you thinking?" she asked, sliding an arm around his waist. "That 5 years ago I was planning to destroy your father and probably die in the process. That I was so consumed by revenge and power I couldn't see any other path. And now? Now I have everything I never knew I wanted. A wife who challenges me to be better. A daughter who depends on me to be worthy of her love. A life that isn't perfect, but is mine." He looked at her, moonlight catching in his eyes. "Now I understand what real power is." "What's that?" "Having something worth protecting. Someone worth becoming better for. The strength to walk away from who you were to become who you need to be." He kissed her softly. "You gave me that, Elena. You gave me everything." "We gave it to each other," she corrected. They stood together under the stars, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them, and Elena thought about journeys and transformations and the strange mathematics of love. She'd been taken against her will. She'd fallen for her captor. She'd chosen to stay when she could have left. And through it all, she'd somehow found the life she was always meant to have, not despite the darkness of how it started, but because of what they'd both been brave enough to build from it. In the distance, music still played from the reception. Their friends' laughter carried on the evening breeze. The farmhouse glowed with warm light, full of the life they'd created. "Do you think Hope will understand someday?" Luca asked. "When she's old enough to hear the real story, will she hate me for how it started? I think she'll understand that people are complicated, that we make mistakes and hurt each other, and sometimes find redemption in the last places we'd expect it." Elena touched his face. "And I think she'll see that her father loved her mother enough to change everything. That's not nothing, Luca. That's everything." Hope stirred in her sleep, making soft baby sounds, and both her parents immediately focused on her with the kind of attention that had once been reserved for threats and enemies. "We should get her to bed," Elena said. "In a minute. Let's just stay here a little longer." So they did. 3 people who'd found each other through violence and chosen each other through change,
standing together under a sky full of stars and possibilities. The girl who'd walked away had walked back and found something worth staying for. The man who'd taken her had learned to let go of everything except what truly mattered. And together, they'd built something that no empire could match. A family, a future, and the kind of peace that only came from having the courage to transform. In the end, Luca Moretti learned that the greatest strength wasn't in controlling everything or eliminating every threat. It was in having something precious enough to protect and being brave enough to become the kind of person who deserved it. He'd been a monster who became a man. Elena had been a victim who became a partner. And hope, beautiful, fearless hope, she was the proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest futures. If you were brave enough to choose them, if you were strong enough to change, if you loved enough to try, they'd been all three, and it had been enough, more than enough. It had been everything.